Chapter 1. Is this kid dead? The yellow-haired young man stretched out his leg and kicked the skinny boy who was curled up on the ground without moving. The other party's lack of reaction made him a little panicked. He just wanted some crystal coins and didn't want to cause any deaths. Otherwise, if he was caught by the prosecutor, he would be forced to serve his sentence in the 8 Directions battlefield. Boss, it looks like the person is really dead. Xiao Yan, who was standing by, felt something was wrong and immediately hugged the yellow-haired boy and pulled him back, while quickly squatting down to check the boy's breath on the ground. No breathing. Xiao Yan's fingers trembled and he quickly took a few steps back. The yellow-haired man spat, lit a cigarette, half squatted down, and scratched the boy's face with his greasy long nails. He said impatiently, "What should we do now? Damn it, he just extorted some money, but he killed someone. This kid is really weak. Is he really a student of Northeastern College? He is too weak." Compared to Huang Mao, Zikanjian was obviously much more timid. At this moment, his expression was very confused. He put his hands together and trembled. "Don't be surprised. Don't be surprised. Life and death are determined by fate. Life and death are determined by fate. All right. Stop nagging and think about what to do. Do you want to be banished to the mist gate and fed to monsters?" Huang Mao stood up, and his impatient words sounded particularly cold in the smoke. The little boy lowered his head and muttered a few more words before he rolled his eyes and looked around carefully. In the dark night there were only scattered lights in the distance, and the alley was completely silent. "Boss, let's throw the body into the May River. It's the rainy season now, and the water in the May River is rising fast. With that much water, I guarantee the prosecutor won't be able to find this place. That's it." The yellow-haired man took a deep puff of his cigarette and flicked the ash carelessly. The fine dust, along with the sporadic flames, scattered on the face of the young man on the ground. A touch of heat dissipated in the silent air. What a damn bad luck. A night breeze blew gently, and the night in the City of Life became even quieter. Huang Mao and Zikanjian walked out of the alley quickly and were approaching Maihe River outside the city. In the darkness of the night, it was terrifying to carry such an unlucky thing. The sound of the wind in my ears and the sound of the flowing water of the May River in the distance made this remote path seem even more eerie. "Boss, can you please say a few words? I'm getting goosebumps." The narrow eyes trembled. The yellow-haired man changed his hand to hold the boy's body and sneered, "You kid, are you scared already? If you really see a monster, you will cry for your parents. But you know what, this kid looks so skinny and weak, it would be really tiring to carry him for so long." As he spoke, the yellow-haired man stretched his stiff right hand and said, "Hey, how about, you carry it?" "Ah." Seeing that the yellow-haired man was about to put the corpse on himself, the man with narrow eyes was immediately frightened. He waved his hands tremblingly and took a few steps back. The yellow-haired man sneered disdainfully. A gust of night wind blew by, blowing up the boy's hair, revealing an extremely fair and handsome face. His eyes were tightly closed, there was a bruise at the corner of his mouth, and a tiny red mole at the corner of his eye. The narrow-eyed man was afraid that Huang Mao would go crazy again and ask him to carry the body, so he quickly changed the subject. "This boy, he's not bad looking." Huang Mao said disdainfully, "A pretty boy." Seeing that Huang Mao's attention was diverted, Zikanjian breathed a sigh of relief, and the two continued to move forward. The sound of the May River was getting closer. His narrow eyes unconsciously looked around, and when they swept across the boy's face, they involuntarily lingered for a while. The cool water vapor from the May River traveled through space and passed over the boy's face. In that instant, the moonlight suddenly dimmed for a moment. He subconsciously raised his head to look at the sky, and saw large dark clouds blocking the bright moon. When he lowered his head again, a pair of extremely dark eyes suddenly stared at him. The narrow-eyed man screamed, "Boss! What are you calling me? I'm not really asking you to carry me on your back." The yellow-haired guy rolled his eyes. "Alive! The dead are alive!" The panicked words seemed particularly terrifying in the dark night. Huang Mao swallowed and felt that the thin body in his hands seemed to be trembling slightly. The yellow-haired man threw the man aside, and his body hit the ground with a thud, accompanied by a muffled groan. The yellow-haired man pretended to be calm, his eyes wide open. "You kid, you're actually pretending to be dead." No one answered him. "Hey, if you're not dead, stand up." Huang Mao pretended to be calm. The large black clouds dispersed, and the bright moonlight once again covered the land. the moonlight sprinkled on the city of life in the center of the continent and the battlefields on the periphery. It illuminated the Mei River flowing through the city, and it obscured the more distant and mysterious foggy areas. Hello. Before Huang Mao could continue shouting, he found that his voice suddenly became extremely dry. He opened his eyes wide and looked down in a daze, only to see some black vine-like substance piercing his chest. At this moment, blood was dripping down very sluggishly. Ah! Slender Eyes screamed at the top of his lungs, but the scream soon stopped. Another thick black vine emerged from the ground like a poisonous snake and hung Slender Eyes upside down. Were you the one who asked me to stand up? A polite, peaceful, and even gentle voice sounded in the night, and the source of the voice was the young man whose life or death was unknown half an hour ago. The boy was thin and was wearing the Northeastern College uniform. A white shirt and suit pants. He exuded a strong scholarly air. If it weren't for the abnormality on the boy's chest, it would seem like the boy was answering the teacher's questions. 5 or 6 thick black vines emerged from the boy's chest, half of them were surrounding the boy, and the other half were flying in the air. The vine seemed to have pierced directly through the boy's heart, with one end piercing the heart, the other end was connected to a deep red, extremely beautiful flower bud, but the center of the flower bud was not filled with fragrant and sweet pollen, but instead a circle of fine sharp teeth and an extremely turbid, misty eyeball. You. Huang Mao struggled to squeeze out a few words. The boy smiled, and the yellow-haired man was stunned by the boy's kind and friendly smile. Crash! The black vine pierced through his body and quickly retracted. Large amounts of blood spurted out, soaking the ground. A fatal blow. The young man shook his head and looked at the other person who was hung upside down. That person had narrow eyes and a wretched figure. He was now breathing in and out, seemingly frightened by the scene before him. The boy smiled and said, "What about you? Do you have anything to say? Please let me go." I'm sorry, please let me go, it's all Huang Mao's fault. Help." At this time, Zikanjianiar was already frightened out of his wits, with tears and snot running down his face, and his crotch was wet. The boy listened to the words of the narrow-eyed man and laughed, "Help? But you don't want my life? I don't even know you. Help! Help! There's an evil ghost." Slim Eyes yelled at the top of his lungs, hoping to attract the attention of the patrol prosecutor, but after the first 2 shouts, he lost the ability to communicate. The black vines that had originally only bound him tightened immediately, squeezing his chest, and Slim Eyes lost his voice instantly. The crimson flower suddenly opened up and swallowed Slim Eyes in one gulp. A creepy chewing sound was heard. 5 seconds later, there was no more movement. The vine slowly retracted, making a slight sound of breaking through the air, and when it approached the heart, it gradually vaporized. At that moment, the boy's upper body seemed to become transparent, and his internal organs seemed to be clearly visible, but the left chest where the heart should be was empty. Instead, there was a fist-sized seed, and a silk-like substance connected the seed to the boy's limbs. The boy looked at the bloodstains on the ground and sighed. He didn't plan to clean anything. So much blood could not be covered up with just a few handfuls of dirt. The smell of blood was extremely strong and would not dissipate completely even after a few days. Those prosecutors had sharp noses and he could not hide it from them. I looked around and saw silence. The Mei River flowed from the west to the east of the city. If it weren't for the strong smell of blood, it would have been a mild night. The young man sighed, turned, and left. The moonlight shone on the boy's white shirt, illuminating a line of small words on his badge, Northeastern College Physical Education Class 9, Chen Chen. Chapter 2. 2:30 in the morning. Squeak! The door of a remote little house in the alley opened. Moonlight shone in through the window. Chen Chen sat on a chair in the room and poured himself a glass of water. He is not the evil ghost that Slender Eyes said, he is just a dead person whose life was stolen. After the 2 academy wars, those physical ability users who were classified as intermediate level D-level had no right to choose their own destination and were assigned to the eastern battlefield among the 8 directions battlefield. During a mission to explore the Mist Gate, he was left behind by his teammates in the snow, severely injured, with a high fever, and in a coma. Just as his consciousness was about to fade away, he was miraculously awakened by a subtle pain, but he was even more desperate to find that a strange black vine monster was gnawing at his body. The heart-wrenching pain made him struggle subconsciously, and the instinct for survival made him dig, tear, and drag his body, which had lost consciousness due to excessive blood loss, bit by bit, and crawl towards the foggy door. Second after second, step after step, his hand had clearly touched the boundary between the foggy gate and reality, but the crimson flowers had already begun to gnaw at his heart. With his vision half bright and half dark, he felt as if he was standing at the junction of life and death, reality and illusion. In the void, a quartz clock as huge as a mountain emerged, and the hands began to rotate, each circle faster than the last. What is that? He subconsciously wanted to ask, but no sound came out. The strange black vine monster had already eaten his heart completely. This weak heart had stopped beating long ago, and his remaining consciousness was only supported by adrenaline and a little illusory power in his brain. Dang, a bell rang, and in the midst of confusion, he heard a long sigh, as if coming from ancient times. The sound became increasingly vague, and he lost consciousness. Ding dong! The pendulum clock on the wall of the cabin made a sound, signaling the hour. It was already 3 o'clock in the morning. Chen Chen's scattered thoughts gradually came back to mind. He was the undead who should have died on the eastern battlefield, but now he was alive and well as a teenager, standing in his own small room. Chen Chen touched the place where his heart should be. It was not a human heart, but instead a deep red seed that pumped blood throughout his body. With a thought, a small black vine stretched out, and the dark red flower with eyeballs on the top rubbed Chen Chen's face very intimately, like a pet acting coquettishly. This strange black vine that was eating away his life actually miraculously merged with him. Suddenly, a flash of light flashed through Chen Chen's mind. The rare monsters that had been mentioned in the monster class, a black vine with deep red flowers and a misty eye at the top. He remembered its name was Poppy. I didn't expect that it was you who let me die on the battlefield, and it was you who took me back to my youth and gave me a chance to be reborn. Chen Chen murmured. Back to my youth. Back to the time when he was a mediocre and dull boy, and now, he has a chance to start over. Chen Chen gradually clenched his hands, calmed himself down, took a shower, changed clothes, rinsed his mouth, and covered himself with a quilt, just as he had done more than a decade ago. Chen Chen forced himself to close his eyes. Even though he would have to get up in less than 4 hours if he went to bed now, he was a student in the 9th class of the Northeastern College. Students had to go to class. Moreover, he guessed that the prosecutor would come to his house tomorrow at the latest if the yellow-haired man and the narrow eyes disappeared. By then, he would have to put in some effort. Therefore, he had to rest. 4 hours later, it was daybreak. The person lying on the bed opened his eyes and subconsciously pressed his heart to confirm that he was still alive. Chen Chen smiled. After quickly washing up, he changed into another white martial arts uniform, slung a backpack across his shoulder, and went out. Following the direction in his memory, Chen Chen strolled to a steamed bun stall. The stall owner was an old lady. Before he rushed to the logistics post on the battlefield, the old lady saw him off. Of course, the always overly enthusiastic squad leader, Zhang Ning, also saw him off. Although Chen Chen didn't know why Zhang Ning, who was not familiar with him, saw him off, the warmth like a family member has always been in Chen Chen's heart. Hey, Xiao Chen, you're up so early again, going to school. The old woman was busy packing food for the customers when she suddenly saw it getting dark in front of her eyes. She looked up and saw the handsome face of a young man. Yes, good morning, mother-in-law. Chen Chen agreed with a smile. The old woman carefully looked at the boy in front of her. The boy was as tall and straight as a bamboo, and her cloudy eyes brightened up. Hey, what a handsome child. I have said before that young people should be energetic and straighten their backs. Isn't this right? He is much more energetic. Chen Chen smiled and said nothing. After his rebirth, his state of mind had indeed changed greatly, sweeping away all his previous gloom. As a man who had died once and was living a miserable life, he no longer wanted to hold any resentment towards this world. The old woman picked out a few of the largest meat buns and handed them to Chen Chen. Be careful on the road. Chen Chen nodded, took the bun and turned away. After the old woman was busy for a while, when she was counting the money, she was surprised to find that there were a few more crystal coins among the ones Chen Chen handed to her. She murmured, this child, it's not easy for him. Chen Chen had already walked a long way away, so naturally he couldn't hear what the old woman said. Well, here we are. Chen Chen looked up at the school gate in front of him. On the moon-white sign were engraved 4 powerful characters, Northeastern University. Without any more hesitation, Chen Chen stepped into the school gate. Taijutsu Class 9 Chen Chen followed his memory and wanted to walk quietly to the back of the classroom as he did before, but while walking, he was keenly aware of the eyes focused on him. Chen Chen was a little confused. Did he wear his clothes backwards? The class leader Zhang Ning was about to come over, but the bell rang, and it was time for the theory class, so he had to give up. Since the historical records of the 4 continents, people have thrived and developed civilization. But one day in 826 AD, the end came, and the 4 continents began to be gradually swallowed by an unknown fog. We lost our companions in the north and west, and only the east and south were left. So we united, established an alliance, and founded 2 cities of life. Chen Chen was supporting his chin, listening to the teacher's story, when a small ball of paper suddenly hit him on the forehead, and there was almost a loud bang on Chen Chen's forehead. Chen Chen looked up and saw Zhang Ning clasping his hands together desperately, saying something like "I'm sorry." Chen Chen sighed softly. This guy forgot that he was a little monster. The soft paper ball in her hands was no less lethal than a stone. If Chen Chen, who suffered from congenital heart disease, was hit before his rebirth, he would probably have some problems. Shaking his head, Chen Chen unfolded the paper ball. You look very different today. You look very handsome, crossed out. Promise me that you will show off your stunning, crossed out, face in the future. Look at your classmates carefully. Smile. After reading it, Chen Chen smiled at Zhang Ning and thought to himself, he is still that overly enthusiastic squad leader. Although the fog is constantly eroding the continent, we have found a way to deal with it. A small number of humans have awakened superpowers in the fog. There are 2 types of superpowers, physical superpowers and elemental superpowers. A fog gate appears outside the City of Life every half a month or so. So, the United Front Bureau divides the battlefield into 8 directions and calls on people with special abilities to enter the fog gate, kill monsters, obtain magic crystals, and use the magic crystals to build magic crystal pillars. The more powerful the magic crystal pillars are, the larger the range of fog that can be dispelled. Thus, this long-lasting war between humans and fog has begun. Zhang Ning smiled at Chen Chen and made a face at the teacher. They had heard this history since they were young and their ears were almost calloused. Although you have been staying in the City of Life for a long time, you are all human elites who have been tested to have special abilities. After your levels are determined in the Academy battle, you will each enter the battlefield of 8 directions. So don't slack off, do your best to learn knowledge and enhance your own strength. Zhang Ning. Listen carefully. The teacher finally noticed Zhang Ning's little trick, her eyebrows raised, and she spoke sternly. Zhang Ning also stood up obediently and whispered, I'm sorry. The teacher shook her head and said nothing more. She knew Zhang Ning was just lively and active, not intentionally so. Besides, Zhang Ning was a rare little genius in physical skills, a treasure in the teacher's hands that could not be scolded or beaten. The levels of superpowers are divided into 5 levels, S, A, B, C, and D. S is the strongest and D is the weakest, and each level is further divided into high, intermediate, and low levels. Zhang Ning had reached the intermediate level of level C in the simulation before entering the academy. After 3 years of systematic study in the school, the teachers are very confident that Zhang Ning can at least reach the low level of level B during the academy battle. As for Chen Chen, the teacher looked at Chen Chen with a look of regret. When he entered the academy, Chen Chen's judgment crystal glowed weakly and was only rated as low-level D grade, almost failing. No one had any expectations for him. Chen Chen, please answer this question. The teacher had noticed the change in Chen Chen from the students' occasional glances back, so he simply called on Chen Chen to stand up and answer the question. Can you please repeat the question again? Chen Chen was a little confused when he was suddenly called out, but he still spoke calmly. The teacher repeated gently, what I'm asking is, do you know anything about the 8-direction battlefield? Chapter 3. The surroundings became quiet, waiting for Chen Chen's answer. Chen Chen thought about it carefully and he knew the standard answer to this question. It is nothing more than that the 8 directions battlefield is a buffer zone demarcated by the United Front Bureau for the struggle between humans and the fog. It is also the place where countless ancestors dedicated themselves for the development of mankind. However, as someone who has actually died on the battlefield once, Chen Chen always feels that such an answer is very irresponsible. So, he sorted out his thoughts and spoke slowly, the 8-direction battlefield is a hellish place. The teacher's handsome eyebrows began to frown. 1 second, you may be chatting and laughing with a living being, but the next second, you may fall into the mouth of a monster and become its food. Although there are all kinds of magic crystals, mysterious gems, and skill scrolls in the Mist Gate, there are more bloodshed, sacrifice, betrayal, and death. The students looked at each other and began to discuss in a low voice. Some sighed, some questioned, some were afraid, and some cowered. They were all rookies who had only been in school for 3 years. Even though they had heard about the horror of monsters, they still firmly believed that they could accomplish great things with their superpowers. Chen Chen's words were undoubtedly a shock to them. The teacher coughed lightly and said, "Well, Chen Chen answered very well. Don't answer like that next time." Ding-ling, the bell for the end of get out of class rang, and the surroundings began to become noisy. The rules in the academy are still very loose. There are only classes in the morning, and the afternoon time can be arranged freely. Monday and Wednesday are theoretical classes, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday are practical classes, and Saturday and Sunday are rest. Chen Chen. Zhang Ning was about to look for Chen Chen, but found that the young man had disappeared. Well, running so fast, really? The girl walked away muttering. At this time, Chen Chen was on his way to the physical training library. The biggest benefit of being reborn is that the poppy has replaced his originally weak heart and established a flesh and blood connection with his limbs. He has a feeling that if he tests his physical talent again, it will be at least above rank B. However, he did not plan to remeasure his physical talent now. The academy battle in a month would be the best opportunity. Before that, he had to use this precious time to do something more important. Returning to his youth, what Chen Chen wanted most was to become stronger. He had experienced enough of the pain brought by weakness. Because of a congenital heart disease, he was abandoned by his parents. He discovered that he had a talent for physical skills, but he was only a low-level D rank. Because of his weak body, even a gangster like Huang Mao could step on him a few times. After 6 years of study, his rank in the academy was still only a low-level D rank, and he could not choose his own path, so he could only be assigned to the logistics post of the eastern battlefield, and in the end, when he was on a mission, he was abandoned by his teammates, and he was eaten up by the monster Umiran even though he struggled desperately, and fell into death. Become stronger. Have the power to decide your own destiny. Chen Chen secretly made up his mind. He had no particular hatred towards this world. Being able to be reborn was already a blessing. There was no point in seeking revenge. Therefore, he had no other desire except to become stronger. Thinking of this, Chen Chen had already walked to the first floor of the library. The physical arts library is very simple, with only 2 floors. The lower floor is for students and the upper floor is for faculty and staff. There is no such thing as determining reading qualifications based on talent, and there is no need to do so, because talent itself is an extremely high threshold. Sea-level intermediate physical technique, falling sand palm. Created by Wu Ning, a sea-level physical technique warrior, the palm wind is endless, like yellow sand falling to the ground. It requires extremely high comprehension. Recommended learning level, sea level, low level and above. C rank advanced physical technique, desert sunlight. Created by Lin Mo, a B rank physical technique fighter. The inspiration came from a time when he was transported to the desert through a fog gate and watched the desert sun. This boxing technique is extremely fierce and requires extremely high physical functions. Recommended learning level, C rank intermediate and above. B rank intermediate physical technique, extreme blade. This is a C rank low-level physical technique created by Master Jian. It is very rare for a physical technique created by a warrior whose own level is lower than the level of the physical technique created. To practice this physical technique, you need to equip yourself with a sword or other treasure. After mastering it, you will be invincible wherever the sword reaches you. Chen Chen was dazzled by the various physical skills. In the past, he wanted to practice these physical skills, but as mentioned before, talent itself is an extremely high threshold. His comprehension is not bad, but his weak heart and body make him powerless. Since he had never tried it before, he needed a lot of trial and error. Chen Chen didn't hesitate and took away falling sand palm, desert sunlight, and extreme blade all at once. After saying hello to the teacher in the library, Chen Chen left the school. The latter looked at Chen Chen's look of having found a treasure and shook his head slightly. It seemed that he was just another young man who was too eager to learn. He had not learned much about physical skills, but he had obtained 3 physical skills above sea level at once. His ambition was too high. Chen Chen certainly had no idea what the library teacher was thinking. He was like a small fish that suddenly broke into the vast ocean, and all he wanted was to desperately absorb physical training knowledge. Physical training is not just about learning physical techniques, but also about becoming familiar with the body's functional structure. Chen Chen thought as he walked out of the school. Well, we have to start with the simplest thing. Let's run 50 kilometers to test the waters first. Chen Chen moved his hip joints, pressed down a few times, and moved his muscles a few times. At this time, Zhang Ning, who was about to go home with a few girlfriends, saw Chen Chen again and was about to say hello, but the latter rushed out like a gust of wind. Zhang Ning's eyebrows raised. Wow, this kid slipped away again. Zhang Ning moved his wrists slightly, then pressed his legs down slightly and did a few stretches. The well-proportioned lines of his calf muscles slowly emerged, and then Zhang Ning started running. She just didn't believe that she, a B-rank physical skill expert, couldn't catch up with Chen Chen, who would normally pant for air even when climbing stairs. She wanted to see what this guy was busy with. The other classmates who were watching Chen Chen and Zhang Ning suddenly start a chase. It's inexplicable. Chen Chen exhaled evenly. If his estimate was correct, he had already run 10 kilometers at a pace of about 1.5 minutes per kilometer, and he was still running with ease. His body was like a bunch of plants growing in the sun. Every inch of his skin vibrated slightly with the air. The wonderful rhythm made him more and more intoxicated. After thanking Yu Myron again in his heart for becoming one with him, Chen Chen began to speed up. Zhang Ning, who was chasing behind him, said, "MMP." Zhang Ning was in a rather embarrassing situation at the moment. Although her physical skills were very good, she was not good at speed. At this moment, she was sweating profusely and gasping for breath. Finally, Chen Chen's figure ran out of her sight. Zhang Ning slowly stopped. She was really out of her mind. She had to catch up with Chen Chen. In fact, she didn't have anything important to say. With her hands on her hips, Zhang Ning's resilient waist was shaking slightly in her sweat-soaked shirt, showing that her owner had exhausted all her strength. She gasped, Hey, this kid, how come his speed and endurance have improved so much? It's like he's become a different person." After resting for a while, Zhang Ning finally regained her energy and looked around. She found that she didn't recognize any of the surrounding buildings. It seemed that she had already run out of the city. Zhang Ning's heart collapsed. The sky gradually darkened, and Chen Chen was too lazy to calculate how long he had been running. His muscles were actually starting to ache, but he wanted to test the limits of his body, so he gritted his teeth and persevered. Looking up at the sky, Chen Chen stopped running and took a look at the surrounding environment. The tall buildings had long disappeared, and there were mostly bungalows and manors. The city of life is divided into the inner layer, the middle layer and the outer layer. The inner layer is the United Front Command and the headquarters of the major hunter associations. The middle layer covers a large area and has schools, commercial areas, and living areas, and the outer layer is the suburbs and military garrisons. Outside the city of life is the battlefield of all directions and the deeper fog area. Chen Chen's current position should be in the edge area of the middle level of the city of life. It's time to go back. Chen Chen muttered to himself. Just as Chen Chen turned around, a sound of breaking air came from behind. Chen Chen was startled and was about to use the black vine to protect himself, but something suddenly occurred to him and he stopped the action. If he was right. The sound of breaking air narrowly passed by Chen Chen's ears. A voice also sounded, "Don't move, Chen Chen from Northeastern College's Physical Training Class 9, you are under arrest." Chapter 4. The night is slightly cool. Chen Chen slowly raised his hands to show that he would not resist. "Squat down." A deep baritone voice sounded behind him. Chen Chen half knelt down obediently, waiting for the person to approach. There was a sound of hard leather shoes hitting the ground, and the man's shadow fell right in front of Chen Chen. A cold and rough touch fell on the back of his hand. Chen Chen's heart tightened and he suppressed the urge to struggle. His hands were tied. The man walked out from behind Chen Chen, leaned sideways, stared at Chen Chen, and picked up the dark blue sword that was inserted diagonally into the ground with one hand. The sound of breaking through the air just now came from this sword. If Chen Chen dared to resist just now, this sword would have pierced through his heart. "I'm Lang Ning, the East District Patrol Attorney. You are suspected of a homicide. Please come with me." As he spoke, Lang Ning half-forced Chen Chen to stand up and walk towards a black floating carrier. Chen Chen pretended to struggle a few times and hummed a few times as he was being dragged away, showing that he was very nervous and confused. He looked like a good citizen who didn't know what was going on. While sitting in the car, Chen Chen lowered his head, portraying the image of an inexperienced student vividly, but what this good student was thinking in his heart, only God knew. The prosecutor, who called himself Lang Ning, took out a cigarette, lit it, and looked at the boy in front of him with half-closed eyes. The boy's face was delicate and tense, with a thin body and a timid expression. He didn't look like a perverted murderer at all. Lang Ning was a little surprised, but he didn't let his guard down. He didn't want to waste time, so he asked directly, "Do you know why we want to arrest you?" Chen Chen shook his head honestly and looked at Lang Ning in confusion. With this expression and this posture, there is simply no one in the world more innocent than him. Lang Ning took a puff of his cigarette and asked with half his eyes half closed, "Did you go to Dongmen Lane yesterday?" Chen Chen was silent for a moment, as if he remembered something scary. His face turned extremely pale, and after a few seconds, he nodded slightly. Seeing him nod, Lang Ning sat up slightly, staring at the boy with his sharp eyes, his gaze like a torch. Then, "Have you seen a young man with yellow hair and narrow eyes?" Chen Chen's voice trembled. I have. What were you doing?" "They robbed me." Lang Ning was not surprised by Chen Chen's words. The prosecutors had actually been to Chen Chen's home, but there was nothing in that small house except simple household items, and the only weapon they could find was a kitchen knife. They had also been to the academy, but had missed Chen Chen, so they could only ask a few teachers. However, those teachers only said that Chen Chen seemed to be an inconspicuous little guy, and his physical skills level was just barely enough to enter the school. After a preliminary investigation, they felt that Chen Chen was not in high danger, so only Lang Ning was responsible for bringing him back. Hearing the boy's pitiful words, Lang Ning's tone softened. He sighed and said, "I sympathize with your experience, but do you know what happened after that?" Chen Chen shook his head gently, listening to Lang Ning's gentle tone. His heart remained calm. When he started, he had already thought of the words, "I was knocked unconscious by them at that time. I don't have a good talent for physical skills, and I have a congenital heart disease, so..." Chen Chen did not say the rest. He believed that the prosecutors had conducted relevant investigations and knew that what he said was true. "I see." Lang Ning took a puff of his cigarette, and then asked casually, "You're not very talented in physical training, but you're pretty good at running? Was it always like this before?" Chen Chen continued to shake his head. "No, it's the changes that happened after I woke up in my he." Chen Chen paused and looked up at Lang Ning. "Mr. Prosecutor, I know I sound like a lunatic with hallucinations, but you must believe me. After I woke up, I found that all the wounds on my body disappeared, and my body is even stronger than before." "Oh? Is that true?" Lang Ning responded indifferently. Chen Chen nodded quickly. Chen Chen's fair little face was full of urgency, as if he was worried that the prosecutor would not believe him, but deep down, Chen Chen had his own plans. The reason why he said that his strength had become stronger was because Chen Chen had to rationalize the changes in himself after his rebirth, otherwise people would only suspect that his soul had been eroded by the fog. Chen Chen remembered that before his rebirth, at this point in time, a strange S-class healer named Matharine came to the East District. She appeared near the May River and unfortunately passed away half a month before the Battle of the Academy. Chen Chen believed that as the prosecutor of the Eastern District, Lang Ning could not have been unaware of the arrival of such a big shot. What he wanted to do was to make Lang Ning feel that he was lucky enough to be saved by Matharine, who happened to appear near the May River. But at the same time, it could not be verified because Ms. Matharine's whereabouts were erratic and she was very likely to have passed away. Seeing Lang Ning's half-believing and half-doubting look, the dramatic Chen Chen further explained, "Yes. I feel that my body has become more energetic and lighter, like a plant bathed in the sunday. I don't know why this change happened, so out of curiosity, I wanted to see to what extent my body has improved in the afternoon, so I ran for a long time. Before I knew it, I came here and met you." Hearing this, Lang Ning frowned. Chen Chen continued to cheer, "Prosecutor Lang Ning, you must believe me. I am not lying." After saying this, those extremely dark eyes looked straight at Lang Ning without any dodging. Everything Chen Chen said was true, and his excited tone came from the heart. However, this change was not caused by the S-level healer Meslin, but by the monster Poppy in the Mist Gate. Sometimes, the biggest lies are the most sincere words. Seeing the boy's unflinching gaze, Lang Ning actually believed what he said. After all, he did receive news that Ms. Matharine, an S-rank healer, was wandering around the May River area. But in any case, routine inspections are still necessary. So Lang Ning stopped asking questions and closed his eyes, quietly waiting for the floating carrier to arrive at the destination. Thump. Half an hour later, the floating carrier landed smoothly. Lang Ning opened his eyes and looked at the boy in front of him who was reading seriously. He smiled slightly and said, "Come here, I will help you untie the rope." Chen Chen moved over obediently. The rope was untied. Lang Ning patted Chen Chen's head and said gently, "Thank you for your cooperation. I have already understood the general situation. The past days were very difficult, but you are a lucky child, and the road ahead will be brighter." Chen Chen responded with a gentle smile. The two men got off the transport vehicle, and a building that crawled on the ground like a cheetah appeared before their eyes, magic crystal pillars emitting black light, grey marble arches, a statue of an arbitration angel holding a holy sword, and another statue of an ancient saint with his arms clasped to symbolize salvation, mysterious, solemn, dignified, and holy. This is the East District Prosecutor's Office, a protective agency that has the functions of patrolling the city, punishing criminals, and conducting fire rescue. Just as Chen Chen was immersed in the charm of the magnificent building, a sad, wild, and hissing song rang out and quickly approached Lang Ning and Chen Chen. "I want to fly forward. I am the rose waiting for love." Chapter 5. To Chen Chen's ears, this music sounded mysterious, sad, yet wild. He even wanted to run forward to see the god who was playing this music. But Lang Ning next to him didn't seem to think so. To be precise, Lang Ning's eyebrows were now so wrinkled that they could pinch a fly to death. Lang Ning felt a little headache, and looked at the person who was walking towards them. "Asu, I told you not to play this kind of music in the prosecutor's office. It's embarrassing with so many people coming and going." Lang Ning hadn't even finished his words when he was shocked by the scene before his eyes. Because at this moment, Chen Chen was just like seeing a god descending from heaven. His eyes sparkled, and he greeted the newcomer with an expression of great curiosity and admiration. The man was dressed in a black Taoist robe. His expression was solemn but also mysteriously peaceful. His face was between youthful and mature, making it difficult to tell his exact age. Next to the black Taoist robe, a small, crystal-clear magic crystal was floating, and the moving music was coming from here. Then, the visitor opened his lips slightly and said, "You old man, you know nothing." The language was so vulgar that Chen Chen's impulse to meet him was even dampened for a moment. However, soon, the beautiful music made Chen Chen feel good about the person in front of him again. He looked at Lang Ning behind him with sparkling eyes, and the meaning in his eyes was very clear. "Please let me and this gentleman in front of me get to know each other. We have similar tastes." In these few short minutes, the image of Chen Chen as a poor little student in Lang Ning's mind suddenly collapsed. However, out of politeness, Lang Ning still gave the two a brief introduction. "Tang Su, Deputy Director of the Procuratorate. Chen Chen, the arrested suspect in connection with Operation D16. Speaking of this, Lang Ning also found it funny. The Deputy Director and the suspect were about to hit it off right away. This world is so weird. After hearing this, Chen Chen smiled and said warmly and friendly, "Hello, Deputy Director Tang Su, this is really good music." Tang Su was also very happy. He was sincerely happy that the boy in front of him had the same noble taste as him, so he also said eagerly, "Hello, just call me Asu, the suspect boy." Lang Ning felt that the scene before his eyes was becoming increasingly bizarre, and it almost made him feel dizzy. However, he still remembered what he did, so he coughed lightly and said, "Asu, I still have to take this little guy to get checked out. There shouldn't be anything wrong. After the checkup, you can talk again." Asu laughed heartily, and only when he laughed did some fine lines appear at the corners of his eyes, revealing the fact that he was not a teenager. However, his words immediately tightened Chen Chen's somewhat relaxed mentality, and it could even be said that his hair stood on end. Asu, who was wearing a black Taoist robe and looked ageless, said with a smile, "No need, I will take this young boy up myself. There is something strange about him." The sound was plain, but it was like thunder exploding out of nowhere. A dark blue sword was directly across Chen Chen's neck. Lang Ning's face was solemn. Asu rarely said such things, and he didn't think that Chen Chen's equally bizarre taste in music really impressed him. Chen Chen's back was almost wet with cold sweat, but it was already getting dark, so it wasn't very obvious. "Hey." Lang Ning smiled gently, without any movement of his hands, but the blue-black sword in Lang Ning's hand seemed to be slowly pushed away by a soft but tenacious invisible force. Chen Chen felt the brief confrontation between his neck, and his extremely dark pupils shrank slightly. He could feel that if the man named Asu wanted, his neck would be broken in an instant. This man is very strong. After pushing away Lang Ning's sword, Asu said with a smile, "Don't be nervous, Lang Ning, it's not what you think." "Then you?" Lang Ning frowned, a little confused. Asu looked at Chen Chen with a smile and said, "What I mean is, we may have found a treasure." Eastern District Prosecutor's Office, Testing Room 134. In the extremely empty room, there was nothing except a large magic crystal device suspended in the center, which further highlighted the extraordinary nature of this magic crystal device. This is a device that is taller than the two Chen Chens combined and wider than the three yellow hairs pierced by Yumiran strung together. In the middle is an extremely dazzling golden magic crystal, and there are 2 layers of sea blue magic crystals surrounding it like star tracks. It is magnificent, mysterious, and majestic. "Suspect boy, come here." Chen Chen tried his best to suppress his urge to escape immediately and leaned over resignedly. Asu stretched out his hand and placed it right in front of the golden magic crystal. At this time, there were only Asu and Chen Chen in the room, and Lang Ning was ordered by Asu to guard outside. There seemed to be a thread-like substance extending from the center of Ax's palm. Originally, Chen Chen could not see this thread, but after Yumiran and Chen Chen merged, he had a stronger sensitivity to the elements, and therefore could feel the thread-like power fluctuations. "You can see, right?" Asu said with some anticipation and amusement. Chen Chen's heart tightened, and after hesitating for a moment, he nodded slightly. The smile on Asu's face became more and more obvious. Next, the speed of the aquamarine magic crystal became faster and faster, just like an asteroid being attracted by a mysterious gravity and began to move. The golden elemental trajectory extended from the golden magic crystal in the middle and merged with the silk thread in Ax's palm. "Now, young suspect, please stand directly under the Eye of Amutha." Eye of Amutha is the name of this magnificent misty collection. Yes, it can no longer be called a magic device, but a mist collection with unpredictable power that cannot be accurately defined. It is the spoils of countless superpowers who shed blood and sacrificed a lot after entering an S-level mist gate. It is also the S-level precious collection numbered 062 of the Eastern Continent United Front Bureau. Chen Chen hesitated for 2 seconds. In his mind, he quickly calculated the possibility of driving Haitang to escape. Chen Chen's dark eyes stared at the smiling Asu in front of him. Chen Chen didn't seem to see any hostility in the other's eyes. After another second, Chen Chen sighed and still obeyed Asu's arrangement obediently. When he walked under the Eye of Amuna, Chen Chen felt that an invisible cylindrical air barrier surrounded him. His body gradually floated in the air and established a mysterious connection with the golden magic crystal in the middle. Asu took a step back, then stared eagerly at Chen Chen who was floating in the air. In a trance, Chen Chen felt that the way Asu looked at him was like looking at a girl in a sailor suit, a pretty widow whose husband had left home, or his wife's best friend who came to visit alone. Don't ask why the poor, innocent, simple, and gloomy boy before his rebirth understood these words. You have to know that human beings' ability to associate and acquire knowledge is innate. Click, a sluggish sound was heard, and for an instant, Chen Chen felt that some mysterious force penetrated from the top of his head to the feet, as if a living person was suddenly thrown naked into the vast universe. After a few seconds, pure white and blue-black light refracted from the Eye of Amutha. Asu smiled knowingly. Sure enough, his feeling was right, this boy had completely different attribute powers in his body. For many years, there hadn't been a person with both physical and elemental attributes on the mainland. This time, he really had found a treasure. However, before Asu's smile could completely freeze, suddenly, a grey mist suddenly seeped out from the Eye of Amutha. The mist condensed and faintly formed a throne, which appeared behind Chen Chen, suppressing the pure white and blue-black lights to one side, appearing extremely domineering. Asu opened his mouth into an O shape as he looked at the incredible scene in front of him. Chapter 6. Asu stared in amazement at everything that was happening before his eyes. As the throne formed by the grey mist took shape, the original light of the Eye of Amutha was suppressed and dimmed a lot, and the whole device began to make creaking sounds as if it could not bear the heavy weight, as if expressing a strange awe and submission. Lang Ning, who was guarding outside, only felt that the ground seemed to shake for a moment. Broken, a series of magic crystal lamps suddenly exploded. Lang Ning subconsciously protected himself with his right hand. The broken debris bombarded his body like bullets. At the same time, outside the East District Prosecutor's office, on the edge of the City of Life, the fog above the 8 Directions battlefield suddenly surged like waves. What's worse, Fog storms formed in the central area of the fog. The various watchtowers observing the foggy battlefield immediately sounded the alarm, and the sound of beeps echoed throughout the battlefield. The most unlucky ones should be the people who are currently killing monsters in the mist gate. They only felt the space tremble, and then the monsters in front of them that were originally dying suddenly went into a violent state as if they were injected with chicken blood. It's really, his mother's. Fortunately, however, this change only lasted for a short time. Seeing that the energy fluctuations of the Eye of Amusa began to become abnormal, Asu immediately became nervous from the initial shock. He made a seal with his hands, preparing to cut off the connection between Chen Chen and the Eye of Amusa. It was wonderful to witness the birth of a genius, but it was also wonderful to see how quickly he was fired and asked for compensation when he had to scrap an S-Class Mist Collection No. 062. Chen Chen felt a miraculous change in the gravity around him while he was in a daze. The air around him seemed to be sucked out in an instant, and he began to cough violently. Just like vacuum-packed food, when the air is sucked out, the poor food inside will of course be compressed. After Chen Chen lost oxygen, his vision went dark and he cursed in his heart, wondering if this man named Asu was going to kill him. A second later, Chen Chen lost consciousness, his body turned sharply, and he was about to fall headfirst from mid-air. Asu on the side had already made a stance, ready to use the force to catch Chen Chen, although as an elementalist, Asu was not very good at physical skills, but he could manipulate gravity to temporarily form a platform to leverage the force, and thus leap into the air. Asu's arms were even in a half-hugged position. Just when Chen Chen was about to embrace the hug of love, something unexpected happened. 5 or 6 black and green vines shot out from the boy's heart as if to protect their master. These vines were like extremely tough spider silk, some of them reached the ground, and some of them were directly wrapped around the supporting pillars above the room. Inside a deep red, delicate poppy bud, its fine and sharp teeth were exposed, and it expanded and swallowed Asu directly. So when Lang Ning, with cuts all over his body, forced his way into the test room, this is what he saw: the light in Amusa's eye gradually dimmed, but there were still traces of pure white and dark blue energy, and these traces of energy were shrouded in a layer of grey mist. Chen Chen was supported by a strange black vine and suspended in the air. He seemed to have lost consciousness for a short time. The deep red flowers with scary eyes were guarding him like the most loyal guards. Asu! Asu! Asu was eaten by a strange flower. Lang Ning was startled and pounced on it like an eagle attacking a rabbit. The dark blue sword slashed at the crimson flower, but the sound it made was not the sound of plants being chopped into pieces, but instead it was like the collision of metal, making a sharp crackling sound. This thing is too hard. Lang Ning was shocked. The sword in his hand almost slipped out the moment the two came into contact. But Lang Ning still gritted his teeth and held on. He retracted his sword, twisted his legs, kicked in the air, made a 180-degree turn, and used even greater force to chop the dark blue sword on the crimson flower. At the same time, Asu was poking his head out from the flower. Ah! Get out of the way! Both of them were panicked. In an emergency, Asu instinctively turned his head, and Lang Ning's dark blue sword pierced through his shoulder, leaving a short bloody wound. Asu cursed inwardly, and his handprint changed. The air inside the flower bud instantly became extremely heavy, and the layers of fine and sharp teeth could not bear the weight and could no longer form an encirclement. With a kick of his feet, Asu escaped from the poppy flower bud and fell to the ground. After falling to the ground, Asu immediately coughed a few times. After being swallowed by Poppy, an oxygen-free space was formed inside the poppy's bud. At this time, Asu only felt a burning sensation in his throat. Lang Ning rushed over, supported Asu who was coughing, and did not care about the embarrassment of almost stabbing Asu to death with a sword, and asked hurriedly, "What happened? Should we contact the system battle team as soon as possible?" Asu waved his hands, but his throat was still not recovered and he couldn't make a sound. He could only point in the direction of the door, signaling Lang Ning to take him away quickly. Lang Ning glanced at Chen Chen who was still in a coma and the black vine plant that occupied the entire room. He gritted his teeth, half-carried Asu on his back, and ran out of examination room 134 as if escaping. In the central reception room of the Eastern District Prosecutor's office. What on earth is going on? Lang Ning's voice was confused and urgent. It's not his fault. After all, after being called out by Aksu to guard the door, Lang Ning had no idea what was happening in the room. He just heard Aksu activate the Eye of Amusa, and then there was a rustling sound, and then the magic crystal lights in the corridor suddenly exploded, Then, he went in and saw the strange flower swallowed Aksu. Asu felt that his throat seemed to be a little better at this time, so he tried to speak to see if his voice had recovered. I am looking up at the moon, above the moon, there are so many dreams. Lang Ning. Before he finished singing, seeing Lang Ning's murderous look, Asu tactfully stopped his heavenly music. Hey, don't be so nervous. Really, I wasn't killed by the strange flower in the boy's body just now, but I was almost stabbed to death by your sword. Lang Ning had a blank expression on his face. Don't talk nonsense. Tell me clearly what happened. Asu shook his head helplessly, and was once again speechless to this serious colleague, but soon, his expression became extremely excited. We in the East District have found a treasure. Bao? Chen Chen. Lang Ning became even more confused and asked, what did the eye of a musa detect? Asu's voice began to tremble with excitement. That young boy has dual attributes. He is a dual attribute psychic that hasn't appeared on the continent for many years. A sudden explosion. There was a buzzing sound in Lang Ning's head. Real. In the astonished look in Lang Ning's eyes, Lang Ning continued, and it is very likely that he possesses another kind of energy that has not been recorded. This kind of energy, even the eye of a muta is afraid of it. Lang Ning felt that he was a little slow to react, even the eye of a musa was afraid. Is this possible? That is the S-level mist collection No 062. Are you sure? Lang Ning frowned fiercely. Of course, that's the eye of a musa. And Chen Chen's dual attributes are of high quality, otherwise they would not be detected by the eye of a musa, especially the grey-white mist energy at the end, the quality is even higher than S-level. Pure white physical ability, dark blue wood elemental ability, as for the grey-white mist, we still don't know. But this young man is definitely a target to be won over. There is no doubt about this. This is too incredible. This is unprecedented in the history of the continent. The previous files show that Chen Chen is just a low-level D-level psychic. Lang Ning stammered, could it be that the healing effect of an S-level healer is so strong? Before coming to the prosecutor's office, Lang Ning had already reported to Asu that Chen Chen might be treated by S-level therapist Ms. Matharine. But he never expected that Chen Chen's change would be so terrifying, a single attribute turned into dual attributes, and even an undetermined high-quality energy. Asu licked his lips, a trace of envy flashed in his eyes, but he still shook his head rationally, although S-level healers are very strong, they are not to this extent. Ms. Matharine is very ill and is looking for an heir to her supernatural powers. Chen Chen's second wood elemental supernatural power should be related to this, but the third grey mist could never have been inherited from Ms. Matharine. That wood-related ability is the strange black vine and crimson flower. Lang Ning was deeply impressed by the hard black vine and the deep red flower that swallowed Asu. Asu nodded, agreeing with Lang Ning's guess. Lang Ning frowned and pondered, those black vines and crimson flowers look very strange and dark. They don't seem to be inherited from the therapist Ms. Messerlin, do they? Perhaps it is because of the changes in Chen Chen's own relationships. Asu touched his chin and guessed uncertainly. I have to say that Asu is worthy of being the knowledgeable deputy director of the East District Procuratorate. His ideas are still very clear, but unfortunately, he has gone in the wrong direction. If Chen Chen was awake at this moment, he would definitely laugh out loud. These two guys, with a few words from each other, cleared all the biggest doubts about themselves. However, this was also the excuse Chen Chen found at the beginning, which gave them a good space for association. Why did the S-level healer Ms. Matharine happen to be near the May River at this time and was also in the stage of looking for an heir? Why did Ms. Matharine's healing attribute not be dominated by the common light element, but by the wood element? Everything fits so perfectly and is full of coincidences, all I can say is that this is the most reasonable arrangement. Chapter 7. Lang Ning and Asu were still immersed in the joy of having found a huge treasure for the Procuratorate. Poor Chen Chen, who had been forcibly cut off from the eye of a musa, was still unconscious in examination room 134 due to lack of oxygen. In the room occupied by black vines, the boy's thin body was supported by the black vines and suspended in mid-air. The crimson poppy was making sounds like a crying baby around the boy, as if it was deeply worried about its symbiote. However, Chen Chen could hear nothing. His consciousness was no longer in the real world. Crash 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 in the illusory sea of fog, thousands of lights emerged and then condensed, forming a huge eye without eyelashes in the center of the sea. The foggy sea rolled and roared, crashing into the cliffs and then being scattered at the bottom of the valley. At a certain moment, everything returned to silence. The huge eye without lashes opened. The extremely black pupils and clear ember lines take in the entire sea of fog, high up, indifferent, fair, and peaceful, both contradictory and harmonious, both majestic and compassionate. The eye blinked, and at the same time, the sea of fog resonated with it, as if countless fog creatures issued their calls at the same moment. Then, a clear young voice rang out, "Where is this?" This voice was clearly the voice of Chen Chen, who was unconscious. Chen Chen can be said to be completely confused now. Of course, this is based on the fact that his consciousness has transformed his face. Chen Chen's last memory was that the air around him seemed to be sucked away by an invisible force, and then he fell into a coma due to lack of oxygen. Then, he saw the fog when he woke up. The huge pupils had changed from the holy and strange look when they were just opened, and were moving back and forth in the sea of fog in a panic. What the hell is this place? Why is there so much fog? Where on earth did Asu send me? Did he send me to the core area of the foggy battlefield? Chen Chen frowned his non-existent brows and looked around at his surroundings. Above his head was a sky without the sun, below was an ocean of fog, which occasionally churned and roared, and seemed to be nurturing the spirit of life. Chen Chen looked into the distance and found that the sea of fog had no end in sight. What's the situation now? Chen Chen wanted to touch his head, but just when he was about to reach out his hand, he found that he seemed to have no hands. There was a flash of deep shock in the pupils of the huge eyelashless eyes, and then they spun around themselves in a circle in a hurry. Where are my hands? Where are my feet? Where's my lower body? Isn't it that I only have one head left? No, I can't lift my nose. Where's my face? Chen Chen continued to collapse. God damn Asu, I admired him because of his amazing taste in music. I didn't expect him to be such a mean person. And that prosecutor Lang Ning, didn't he say that the next inspection would be nothing? Would killing me increase his year-end bonus? The United Front Work Department and the Procuratorate are birds of a feather. I didn't see you when I was beaten to death, but now when I'm helping the people to get rid of harm, you've arrested me again, idiots, good-for-nothings, freeloaders, and nephews. Chen Chen began to mutter and curse, revealing his gloomy nature before his rebirth. In the past, when he was beaten and had no other options, he could only rely on this kind of painless little yelling to relieve his emotions. Most of the time, this trick worked, but in the current situation, it obviously didn't work. Chen Chen cursed for about half an hour, but finally resigned himself to his fate and drove his unknown body forward. His idea was simple. He couldn't just stay where he was. He should move forward and maybe something would change. The huge pupil moved above the sea of fog. As it moved, a passage opened up below the sea of fog, revealing the ground below. The two sides were surrounded by the separated sea of fog. It was as if the sea of fog was welcoming Chen Chen. Looking at this rather strange scene, Chen Chen was extremely surprised. Although he was a nobody who died tragically on the foggy battlefield before his rebirth, he had a natural fear of the fog, but at this moment, he felt that the swirling fog was very close to him, more than close, it was simply trying to please him. After thinking for a while, Chen Chen stopped pushing his body forward and fell straight into the sea of fog. The imagined pain of falling to the ground did not happen. The huge pupil emitted a dazzling light the moment it touched the bottom, and then, Chen Chen's thin young figure walked out of it. Chen Chen's consciousness hummed for a moment, and soon returned to normal. This time, when Chen Chen subconsciously raised his hand, he finally felt the sensation of muscle tissue being pulled. My body is back. Chen Chen muttered to himself. I tentatively stretched my legs and turned my waist, and everything seemed normal. A certain guess flashed through his mind, and his mind focused on floating up. Another ray of light emerged, and Chen Chen changed into the eye without eyelashes again. After repeating it several times, Chen Chen finally figured out the pattern. It seems that whenever I want to survey the sea of fog in the air, I will become headless and footless like before, and whenever I want to come down and observe carefully, I will become my original appearance. It's very convenient. But why does my consciousness have an actual impact on this foggy world? Besides, how do I get out of this damn place? Hey, I looked around but didn't see any door or hole or anything like that. Where is the door? Chen Chen looked at the fog surrounding him, feeling the strong call and yearning in the fog, and suddenly had a bold guess in his mind, do it when you think of it. Chen Chenping spread out one hand, thinking of the story of the miraculous farmer and the treasure that the old lady in the orphanage had told him before, and hesitantly said, Open sesame. There was no response from anywhere. No. Chen Chen scratched his head. Just as he put his hand down and prepared to transform into an eyelashless eye again, the mist facing his palm underwent a magical change. The fog began to boil, making a hissing sound. Chen Chen was startled and subconsciously took a step back. A small piece of independent fog separated from the sea of fog that Chen Chen was facing, and then a crack appeared in the middle. Chen Chen's eyebrows jumped, and he muttered, "Is it really possible?" The crack grew larger and larger, and then the mist separated from the crack began to materialize, forming a tightly closed door. This door was very familiar to any psychic who had been to the battlefield. This is the fog gate that appears once every half a month in the 8 Directions battlefield. Chen Chen observed it carefully, then frowned. This fog gate seemed to be a little different from the fog gate in the fog battlefield. If he had to describe it, this fog gate seemed more gorgeous and exquisite. The fog gate opened in the fog battlefield is usually made of bronze for the door side and gold for the handle, but this fog gate has gold for the door side and gemstone for the handle, and there are also large and small eyelashless eyes carved on the door surface. This must be the mist gate, but it seems a little different. Chen Chen rubbed his chin and pondered. When Chen Chen was about to observe further, he suddenly felt a burning pain in his right arm. What the hell? Chen Chen raised his right arm, and a line of numbers appeared on it. 11000000. Not only did this number suddenly appear on Chen Chen's arm, it even began to undergo a series of changes on its own. 10235959, 10235958, 10235957. 10235930. Chen Chen instinctively thought that this string of numbers was a countdown. 10 should be days, 23 is hours, 59 is minutes, 30 is seconds. But what is this countdown to? Suddenly, Chen Chen felt a throbbing pain in his head. Covering his head, Chen Chen muttered, "Isn't it because I overuse my brain? Is it because I need to grow a brain?" Chen Chen felt that a certain energy in his body was being rapidly drained, and an alarm sounded in his heart. Oh no, he must have consumed too much mental power and was now on the verge of a second coma. You have to do something before you faint. Chen Chen's idea is very simple. So he used up his last bit of willpower and pushed open the foggy door. Bang! The ancient and exquisite, golden, and jewel-paved mysterious door opened under the cover of the sea of fog. A huge fountain, busy paths, a lively little girl and a big golden retriever. This is Freedom Park in the East District of the City of Life. Chapter 8. When the dim light shone through his slightly dilated pupils and his weak brain reacted to see clearly the 2 unidentified objects lying on top of him, Chen Chen blurted out his mother's words. Chen Chen never expected to see this scene when he woke up. Lang Ning and Asu were staring at Chen Chen with bright eyes, as if he were looking at a peerless beauty. In an instant, Chen Chen felt a layer of goosebumps on the back of his hand. Back of hand. Chen Chen thought of the number that suddenly appeared on his right arm, and his mind moved. However, he resisted the urge to check his arm immediately. It was not the right time yet. Lang Ning and Asu were still here. Chen Chen still remembered that his character after rebirth was a pitiful, innocent, and lucky college boy. So he resisted the urge to kick the 2 guys away, and spoke with a tone so innocent and weak that even many girls would feel ashamed of themselves. What's wrong with me? Brother Lang Ning, Asu, why are you looking at me like that? Weren't we in the testing room just now? What happened? When Asu heard Chen Chen speak, he immediately showed a self-proclaimed friendly smile. You're awake, young suspect. We were indeed in the testing room just now. But unfortunately, you missed the shocking scene in the testing room just now. Then who was the reason why I missed the so-called shocking scene? Chen Chen rolled his eyes in his heart. But out of curiosity to know what happened, Chen Chen still held his temper and asked, "Oh? So what happened?" Just as Asu was about to describe the amazing miracle that Chen Chen brought in the testing room in an extremely exaggerated tone, he was pushed aside by Lang Ning. Lang Ning tried his best to keep his voice steady. It's like this. The instrument you see in the test room is an S-level mist collection that detects supernatural properties. No 062 Eye of Amusa. Under the Eye of Amusa, you were detected to have dual attribute supernatural powers, physical supernatural power, wood element supernatural power, and an undetermined grey-white mist energy. Having said that, Lang Ning calmed down his excited tone, took a deep breath, and then continued, this situation is unprecedented in the history of the continent. It can be said that this is a historical moment. Unfortunately, the Eye of Amusa was in danger of breaking due to the energy fluctuations you generated, so Axiv forcibly cut off the connection between you and the Eye of Amusa, and as a result, you fell into a coma due to lack of oxygen. After the black vine in your body disappeared, Asu and I went in and brought you out. Lang Ning didn't intend to explain that Asu was swallowed by the crimson flower in Chen Chen's body. This was too embarrassing. After listening to Lang Ning's explanation, Chen Chen was quiet for a while. The amount of information contained in these short words was astonishing, and he needed time to react. First of all, the name Misty Collection. Although Chen Chen was only a logistics staff before his rebirth, he had fought in the eastern battlefield for more than 10 years. He had never heard of this name. He thought that these so-called Mist Collection were all some super strong magic crystal products, and would not be used in large quantities in the Mist battlefield. Then, as for the dual attributes, Chen Chen could understand it. He originally had physical abilities, and after he merged with Yumiren, there would naturally be wood elements in his body, which was why he guided Lang Ning to think that he was accidentally rescued by Ms. Matharine at the beginning. After all, Ms. Matharine was a rare therapist with wood-based abilities. The reason why elementalists have superpowers is because they have a certain affinity for elements. Just like healers, these people have an affinity for both light and wood elements, which is why they have healing abilities. Similarly, Chen Chen, who has integrated Poppy into his heart and limbs, has a stronger affinity for wood elements, so he naturally has wood element superpowers. But grayish-white mist energy? Chen Chen frowned. Could it be that sea of fog? Physical ability, wood ability, an unrecorded mutant ability? Chen Chen himself was a little stunned. Wouldn't the benefit of rebirth be too good? It was so good that Chen Chen began to worry about his future. After all, he had always believed in one thing: the gifts of fate often came with chips. He didn't even know what price he had to pay for his rebirth, and now, this evaluation of unique on the continent made him even more uncertain. Chen Chen's mind flashed with the image of himself being eaten by Poppy, the image of him traveling in the sea of fog, and finally the image of the East District Freedom Garden behind the opened fog gate. Everything is shrouded in a strange fog, making people feel like they are walking on thin ice. Chen Chen unconsciously clenched his right hand, but finally let it go. Then he smiled. It's just dying again. If God has the guts, kill him. Without further hesitation, Chen Chen finally raised his head and looked calmly at Lang Ning and Asu in front of him. Young man, have you digested what happened? Asu's eyes curved with laughter, just like an old fox. Chen Chen nodded, waiting for Asu's next words. Chen Chen could guess that the next step would be to seek amnesty. Even if he has some connection with the murders of Huang Mao and Zikanjian, the potential he revealed is enough to cover up these insignificant doubts. Their intention to win him over can be seen from the names of Eye of Amusa and Misty Collection that Lang Ning took the initiative to reveal. As expected. Asu's voice sounded, well, now, in the name of the Deputy Director of the East District Prosecutor's Office, I congratulate you on passing the test and proving that you have nothing to do with this murder case. You have successfully cleared yourself of suspicion. After a pause, Asu continued, in addition, in the name of the Procuratorate and in my own name, I would like to formally invite you, Chen Chen from the 9th Physical Training Class of Northeastern College, to join the East District Procuratorate after the college battle. The real dagger is revealed. Even if this dagger is a dagger of coercion and goodwill. Chen Chen pinched his thigh and forced his face to turn red, pretending to be extremely excited, but in fact he was not interested at all. Before his rebirth, he was abandoned by his teammates and died on the battlefield because he was too weak, and was even eaten alive by Yumiren. But now, after his rebirth, he was accidentally detected as the only 3-attribute supernatural person on the continent, and he received an olive branch from the Procuratorate. On the mainland, it is just like this, flattering the strong and abandoning the weak. He didn't dislike Lang Ning and Asu. At least during this short time of interaction, they both behaved very interestingly. But now, Chen Chen didn't want to get involved with the military or the Procuratorate. So, after being excited, Chen Chen just raised a very weak smile and said, "Thank you." This answer is equivalent to not agreeing but not refusing either. Lang Ning on the side seemed a little anxious and wanted to say something, but was pulled down by Asu. Asu looked at Chen Chen's pale face and said gently, "I know our request is a bit abrupt and insincere in your eyes. As the first 3-attribute supernatural being in the history of the continent, you will definitely receive olive branches from all sides. You've been through a lot today, and you must be very tired. I'll let Lang Ning take you back. We'll show you the sincerity of the Procuratorate later. How about that?" This time, Chen Chen nodded sincerely and smiled. At 1 o'clock in the morning, Chen Chen finally returned to his home. The hovercraft disappeared at the end of the street. After bidding farewell to Lang Ning, Chen Chen dove into his bed, resisting his fatigue and stretching out his right arm. On the white arm with blue veins, there is a line of misty white numbers, 10202334. Chen Chen's pupils contracted, his palms tightened, and he finally fell into a deep sleep due to exhaustion, and had no dreams all night. Chapter 9. 7 o'clock in the morning. As usual, students of Northeastern College welcomed the practical classes every Tuesday. The practical courses were divided into two departments, A and B, with 3 areas in each department. Areas A1, A2, and A3 are the training venues for physical and supernatural power practical courses. Areas B1, B2, and B3 are the training venues for elemental supernatural power practical courses. In the past, the painting styles of both sides were generally like this. Area A was filled with students wailing in pain. In Area B, teachers and students were all running around being bombarded by randomly released elemental skills. Overall, it is vivid, interesting, and very exciting. But today, something unusual happened. Hey, how many laps did he run? How would I know? I fainted during the run, and when I woke up I found this guy. Oh no, this big guy has been madly trying to get close to the physical training teacher. 2 students were squatting on the ground, discussing something in mumbles. In front of them, the boy in white martial arts uniform once again, in front of everyone's perverted eyes, put the Taijutsu teacher in a circle. Putting him in a circle is already a very polite way of saying it. In fact, the Taijutsu teacher behind him could not keep up with the boy's pace at all and was breathing heavily, but the dignity of being a teacher made them unable to stop chasing. On the other hand, the young man who was leading the way still had light steps, and his speed was even getting faster and faster. At some points, he even left a trail of afterimage. A young man with his hands on his knees finally ran out of strength and stopped, looking in disbelief at the young man who had been running madly past. Who the hell is this person? I've never paid attention to him before. The sound of murmurings and discussions was endless. So much so that everyone in the entire A area gathered at the A3 training ground to watch this big guy who kept circling others. And this big boss was none other than Chen Chen, the weak and frail man who had to gasp for breath even when going up the stairs. Who on earth is this? Not only the classmates were curious, but even the instructors were attracted to their attention. Such a promising talent shouldn't be unknown, right? At this time, Chen Chen was unaware of the sensation he had caused. He felt extremely comfortable at this moment. Every contraction of his muscles, every breath in and out, the resonance of his body in the air, his calves exerting force, his thighs bearing the support, his hips swinging, everything was so natural and harmonious. Faintly, he felt a light plant scent merging more closely with his body, making his body more and more energetic and stronger. While Chen Chen once again thanked Yu Myron for the changes she had brought to him, he ran even harder. External assistance was good, but long-term persistence was even more important. In the past, I was too self-pitying. Because of my heart and physical problems, I refused to do physical training with my classmates to avoid being laughed at. Now that I think about it, I can't help but be a little childish. My body is my own and permanent. What others say about it is meaningless to the outcome. Chen Chen smiled lightly and accelerated again. This time, the students who were on the track withdrew one after another, leaving the track completely to this seemingly tireless young man. Oh my god, this boss is speeding up again. Doesn't he have lungs? A boy who was hanging upside down on the horizontal bar to relax was staring at everything in front of him in amazement. He accidentally lost his grip on the iron bar and fell head first. There are always people better than you, and even better than you. At the same time, the martial arts instructors saw this scene, and their faces, some mature and some old, were tense with surprise. Which class is this from? Check it out. Xiao Lu. Where have you been? Hurry up and see who this student is. Director Wang, I'm Xiao Li, not Xiao Lu. The commotion even attracted the attention of the neighboring area B, and heads whose faces were blackened by the elemental skills turned around one after another. During this routine practical training course, the name Chen Chen spread quickly throughout Northeastern University. People always have a fanatical yearning for geniuses, and they will be even more fanatical about these legendary geniuses who have grown from weak to strong and successfully counterattacked. When people heard that this ring-tossing master was once just an ordinary low-level D-rank student in the 9th class of physical training, the discussion about Chen Chen finally reached its peak. Even if Chen Chen was not very sensitive, he still felt the gaze as glaring as the sun. He slowly stopped and looked at the students who were pointing and criticizing him with some doubt. Just when he was confused, the instructor in front of him waved at Chen Chen and motioned him to come over. Chen Chen quickly ran to the teacher, but was startled by the teacher's solemn yet excited expression. This familiar expression was exactly the same as when he had a heart attack before his rebirth. Coach Zhang, what's wrong with you? Do you have heart problems too? Chen Chen looked at the teacher with concern. Ha 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 ha, burp. The people who gathered around to watch the fun laughed like donkeys. Coach Zhang glanced around unhappily, and when he saw the laughter stopped, he looked at Chen Chen. His old face was smiling like a blooming chrysanthemum. You are Chen Chen from the 9th physical training class, right? You have great physical strength, your body is very open, and your steps are very light. Chen Chen smiled and did not respond. Coach Zhang then asked, well, it seems that you were only at the low D level during the entrance examination. You never participated in the mock test in the meantime, and you rarely came to the actual combat training ground. Mr. Chen Chen, do you not want to be too high profile? Chen Chen shook his head and answered seriously, no, my health was not very good before, and my physical training could not keep up with everyone else, so I did not participate in actual combat training. Then, I encountered some accidents, and my health got better, so. Accident. Chen Chen nodded and said, Prosecutor Lang Ning from the Procuratorate should have investigated and collected evidence from you, right? Coach Zhang touched his head and said, yes, that's true. So nothing serious should have happened. No. The prosecutor's office has already investigated it. It was a misunderstanding. It has been resolved. Sorry for the trouble, teachers. Chen Chen smiled and continued, they said that it might be a therapist who passed by who cured my injury and repaired the original problem in my body. A therapist? Coach Zhang Majuo raised his chin, as if he remembered something, and nodded as if he suddenly realized something. During this period of time, it seemed that Ms. Matharine of S rank was wandering around May River. Chen Chen is such a lucky boy. Just as Coach Zhang was about to give a few more instructions, the campus radio suddenly sounded, attention all students, the actual combat training warm-up session has ended. There was a cheer in the training ground, but soon, the cheer was drowned out by new screams and howls. All students, please note that practical skills teaching has started. I'll go. Seamless connection, worthy of being a real combat training. My legs are still shaking. It's inhumane. The radio ignored the students' complaints and continued broadcasting. Teaching divisions are as follows: A1 Area Teaching Skills, B-Level Intermediate Physical Skills, Extreme Blade, Recommended Learning Level, B-Level Low Level and Above A2 Area Teaching Skills, C-Level Advanced Physical Skills, Desert Sunlight, Recommended Learning Level, C-Level Low Level and Above A3 Area Teaching Skills, C-Level Intermediate Physical Skills, Flying Snow Palm, Recommended Learning Level, C-Level Low Level and Above B1 Area Teaching Skills, B-Level Low Level. Elemental Skills, Melting Fire, Recommended Learning Level, C-Level Advanced and Above. Please go to the corresponding teaching venue according to your needs. The report is over. Ultimate Blade? Desert Sunlight? Chen Chen's mind moved. Chapter 10. Chen Chen thought of the 3 physical skills he had taken out from the physical skills library, and in today's practical skills teaching, 2 of them happened to be taught. When I was intercepted by Prosecutor Lang Ning yesterday, I was watching Extreme Blade. At the beginning, Chen Chen thought that he would find it very difficult to read. After all, Yu Myron only made his body stronger, and had no effect on his IQ and comprehension. Before his rebirth, Chen Chen had never systematically studied physical skills, and Extreme Blade was a very special physical skill book. Not only was it a rare sword and weapon physical skill, but it was also a higher level physical skill created by a lower level physical practitioner, so the difficulty of practicing it was obvious. However, to Chen Chen's surprise, he not only memorized all the moves in just a few hours, but he even had his own insights into some of the moves. Chen Chen sighed at the time, thinking that he was indeed too timid before his rebirth. He thought that he had a low talent for physical skills, so he gave up on himself and never explored his own understanding. However, Chen Chen also understood that it might be because he had been on the battlefield for more than 10 years and had rich experience in escaping death. As a logistics post, he had also seen many talents in this field, so he had some understanding of Extreme Blade. He still needs real combat training. Otherwise, it's just talk. And today's practical guidance is a good opportunity. Coach Zhang was listening to the broadcast and muttering, "Oh, today A1 Professor Extreme Blade is here. It looks like not many people can go. Chen Chen. Coach Zhang was about to tell Chen Chen about some of the physical skills he recommended when he saw Chen Chen taking a step toward the A1 training ground. Coach Zhang quickly grabbed Chen Chen's arm and said, "Hey, kid, wait a minute. The A1 training ground teaches Extreme Blade." Chen Chen was pulled back, somewhat unnaturally. There were numbers counting down on his arm. Chen Chen touched his head, somewhat surprised. Is there a level limit for students in the A1 training ground?" Coach Zhang frowned and managed to utter, "No." "Then is there a level limit for the practical guidance of Extreme Blade?" "No." "Then I should be able to go, right?" "Well, you can go." Seeing Coach Zhang in a dilemma, Chen Chen couldn't help but find it a little funny. "Coach Zhang, don't worry. If I find it hard to learn, I will naturally change the training ground. That's not what I'm talking about." Coach Zhang was not worried that Chen Chen would not be able to learn anything. Learning physical skills is a process of continuous trial and error, and Chen Chen's physical skills have changed a lot, which is obvious to all. But he changed his mind and said, "Forget it, you can go and see it yourself. Young people should dare to think and do." Although Chen Chen was somewhat confused by Coach Jiang's incoherent words, he still thanked Coach Zhang before turning around and leaving. Zhang Ning, who was about to invite Chen Chen to the A3 training ground, was disappointed again. Is this guy not compatible with her feng shui, or is he destined to be a spinning top? Otherwise, why does he spin around as soon as he sees her? Zhang Ning was a little depressed. Seeing his father standing there looking at Chen Chen like a big baby, he rolled his eyes and said, "Dad, stop drooling. Aren't you afraid of scaring the students?" "What are you talking about, you little BD?" Coach Zhang rolled his eyes in annoyance, and then he sucked his lips unconsciously to make sure nothing inappropriate happened. Zhang Ning made a face at her father and prepared to walk towards the A3 training ground. Coach Zhang called his precious daughter, "Little BD, Chen Chen, is he from your class?" "Yeah," Zhang Ning raised his eyebrows. "Hehe, let me tell you, this child has great potential and is a blessed child. You two should move around more often," Coach Zhang said earnestly. Perhaps the other students who were watching the fun just thought that Chen Chen was good at running and should be good at physical skills as well, but as a practical instructor with 20 years of teaching experience, Zhang Ang knew that compared to his current physical skills level, Chen Chen's physical skills potential was more noteworthy. The most important thing in physical training is the body frame, muscle strength, and the lightness of the body. These are the basis of strength and speed. Chen Chen performed extremely well in these three aspects, which shows that he has great potential. After the words fell, Zhang Ning, who always liked to contradict his old man, just hummed obediently this time, which surprised Coach Zhang. A1 Training Ground. A1 is a semi-enclosed training ground with a huge martial arts arena and various weapons made of magic crystals, knives, guns, swords, halberds, axes, forks, whips, and sticks. The huge magic crystal screen is repeatedly playing the physical skills recordings left by the predecessors. The area of the entire A1 training ground is larger than A2 and A3 combined, but it is very empty inside, with only a few people training inside. There were only a handful of people, or to be more precise, there were only 3 people in it, and not even a teacher to guide it. It's just the 3 of us this time. It's so boring. I'm a little tired of seeing your 2 faces. A man wearing a flashy golden martial arts uniform and with hair dyed pink said helplessly. He was somewhat disinterested in picking up a long sword that shone with cold light from the shelf and casually danced with it. Although the action was extremely casual, the air made a buzzing sound wherever the sword danced, and it was obvious that the speed was extremely fast. This long sword is made of B-grade magic crystal, and the blade is cold and gleaming, with a hint of coldness seeping out from the blade. The name of the long sword is Crying Snow. You can imagine how terrifying the power of this thing would be when it hits a person. The big man with a crew cut on the other side rolled his eyes and said, "Don't be so ungrateful. It's just because today we are teaching Ultimate Blade. Not many people in the academy dare to touch this thing. Otherwise, how can we enjoy such a large training ground alone?" The pink guy smiled and flirted with the buzz-cut guy, which made the latter feel disgusted. Then he slowly uttered 2 words, "That's right. The training threshold of Extreme Blade is extremely high, and there are only a handful of talented people in the academy. The pink-haired guy and the buzz-cut guy are among them." The man standing in front of them, who was also a student and possessed the same talent, was the first person to teach extreme blade. "Brother, what's the plan for today? Are you going to demonstrate the new moves, or should I fight with Oakland to see how it actually works?" When the pink guy spoke to the man, he changed his previous cocky attitude and became very respectful. The man called Big Brother wore a simple black martial arts uniform and a pair of gold enamel glasses, looking extremely elegant and peaceful. Although it was a bit strange to see elegance in a student, there seemed to be no other word that could accurately describe the man's temperament except this word. "Today's arrangements." The man was about to speak, but suddenly changed the subject and stared at the gate of the training ground with some amusement. "Maybe there are changes." The pink-haired guy and the crew-haired guy hummed at the same time, then looked in the direction of the eldest brother's gaze with some doubts. The morning sun was a little dim, and the entire training ground was shrouded in a dim grey shadow. At this moment, from this dim grey shadow, a young man wearing a pure white martial arts uniform, with a white face, a red mole at the corner of his eye, and a thin figure walked in slowly. In his hand was a long black vine sword covered with deep red patterns. Chapter 11. The sky is dark and there are unexpected guests. The three regulars at the A1 training ground haven't seen any newcomers come to practice extreme blade for a long time. The pink-haired man and the buzzcut man looked at each other, and both saw the amusement in each other's eyes. The man called Big Brother didn't have any expression, but just looked at Chen Chen calmly, and a gleam of light flashed in his eyes behind the lenses, which were like cold stars. For some reason, Chu Yu always felt that the new boy was not an ordinary person. Kaiyu is the one that Sao Fenin calls Big Brother. He is descended from an ancient martial arts family, and his sword, Kaiyu, is extremely famous. In terms of swordsmanship, it can be said that no one in Northeastern College can match Kaiyu. Therefore, he has always been the one to teach the extreme blade, rather than the physical training instructor. "Hey, little classmate, you are late." The sexy pink guy stepped forward and slid his slender fingers across Chen Chen's right arm in a very sexy manner. Chen Chen almost picked up the black vine sword and hit the strange man. Why does everyone have a special liking for his right arm? He feels guilty, okay? And how could there be such a person in the school, dressed so horribly, ruining his good looks? Sorry, I don't come here often, I found the wrong place. Chen Chen made up an excuse casually. In fact, he didn't have a suitable sword or other weapon. Then he suddenly had an idea and controlled the black vine to make a long sword, so he was delayed a little time on the road. "I don't come here often." The flirtatious pink man raised his head in a somewhat strange tone, noticing that the knife in Chen Chen's hand seemed unusual, and asked with a smile, "Which school or family did this little classmate come from? Such a narrow and strangely shaped knife. I don't think I have ever seen it before." Chen Chen secretly complained in his heart, "Haven't you seen it before?" Because he did it himself. After his rebirth, things happened one after another, and he had no time to supplement his basic knowledge. How could he know such confidential things as the shape of swords? Just now, he just followed his feelings and made an emergency with the most superficial wood elements and black vines. But strangely enough, the long sword took shape very smoothly, without Chen Chen's deliberate guidance. It transformed into this form by itself. The blade was narrow and long, covered with dark red patterns, the handle was made of wood with black vine patterns, and the overall shape was solemn and yet strange. After the sword took shape, it even felt like it shared the same breath and destiny with Chen Chen, as if it was a destined sword that belonged entirely to Chen Chen. "I have neither a school nor a noble family." Chen Chen replied briefly to the pink-haired man. Unexpectedly, after hearing this, the three people present looked at Chen Chen in surprise, especially the pink guy, whose eyebrows were furrowed. The pink-haired man's tone became increasingly strange. "I've never seen you before, little classmate. You can't even find the location of the training ground, and the knives you use don't conform to the basic shape. Little classmate, you have never learned to use a sword, right?" At the end, the pink-haired man's tone gradually became vague, and his pair of peach blossom eyes were looking intently at Chen Chen. Chen Chen nodded honestly. When the man with a crew cut saw Chen Chen nod, he thought to himself that something was wrong. Don't look at the flirty pink man like this. Among the three people, the one who is most obsessed with swordsmanship is not Kaiyu, but him. Because his obsession has developed to the point of being pathological. Because of this, even as the only successor of the Baihe River School, as arrogant as he is, after appreciating Kaiyu's swordsmanship, he willingly calls Kaiyu Big Brother. What Sao Fenman hates most is young men like Chen Chen who act recklessly just because of their interests. This young man has no understanding of swords and knives. After realizing the difficulty of using them, he backs off. This wastes other people's time and energy and is also a disrespect for the way of swords and knives. The pink-haired boy's tone gradually turned cold. Well, little classmate, you know that today's professor is Extreme Blade, right? The man with the crew cut desperately winked at Chen Chen, signaling the young man to find an excuse to leave. But the young man in front of him was not sure if he was stupid or what, he simply did not see his hint, and continued to answer stubbornly. Yes, I know. I just borrowed Ultimate Blade from the library yesterday. I didn't expect that the professor would be there today. I'm really lucky. I just borrowed the Ultimate Blade yesterday. I'm so lucky. The pink-haired man murmured and repeated it, with two sickly blushes appearing on his face. The buzz-cut guy rolled his eyes. This guy is done. If he saw it right, the pink guy's sword, Crying Snow, has started to buzz. The man with a crew cut exchanged glances with Chu Yu next to him and said, Brother, what should we do now? Chu Yu ignored the buzz-cut man's signal, and just watched the two people confronting each other with interest. He was not worried that Chen Chen would be severely punished by Enk, the flirty pink man. On the contrary, he had a strange expectation for the upcoming battle in his heart. Chu Yu found the long sword in the boy's hand, or rather the boy himself, very interesting, so he did not intend to stop the imminent battle. Chen Chen sensed that the atmosphere on the field was not right, and he was alert in his heart, but his face was still innocent. Senior, what's wrong? Aren't we going to start training yet? The pink guy sneered and said calmly, Nothing, let's get started now. As soon as he finished speaking, Crying Snow pierced Chen Chen's left shoulder with a blinding cold light. So fast. Chen Chen was startled and instinctively sensed the danger. His whole body rolled over like a tiger and pressed down, and Crying Snow passed through him diagonally from above. The buzzing sound of Crying Snow piercing the air echoed in his ears, and Chen Chen felt a chill on his back. His body reacted in advance and bent to an incredible degree. The snow-white sword blade actually pierced out from above Chen Chen's forehead again, killing him with a surprise attack. Just these two swords overturned Chen Chen's first impression of the pink man. This man's swordsmanship can only be described as weird. You managed to dodge it. Not bad. But, is your knife just for show? The pink guy snorted coldly. He actually held back on the force just now. After all, he just wanted to teach this daring young man a lesson. However, the young man's reaction speed was unexpectedly good. Chen Chen dodged the two swords from the flirtatious pink man, and got angry. He retorted, I have never used this sword in actual combat. Today I will use it to test the blade of your arrogant senior. The pink-haired man snorted coldly, expressing his disdain for Chen Chen's words, but he still increased his vigilance in his heart. Chen Chen slightly relaxed the grip of the knife and crouched down, recalling the moves of Extreme Blade in his mind, but did not use them in order. Instead, he slashed from below in an extremely insidious manner, directly attacking the pink man's lower body. The pink-haired man thought to himself that it was despicable, and used Crying Snow to strike horizontally, wanting to directly deflect Chen Chen's long sword. When the swords collided, both of their bodies shook at the same time. The pink guy's eyebrows twitched. What a lot of resilience. If Chen Chen was a power-type player, at this moment, his sword would simply be picked away by Kixu's clever force, but the long sword was held firmly in Chen Chen's hand and was not affected at all, which shows that Chen Chen is not a stupid boy who only knows how to use brute force. It's still pretty good. After seeing this scene, the pink guy's tone became much gentler than before. Unfortunately, he had completely annoyed Chen Chen, and Chen Chen did not reply. The black vine sword suddenly gained new strength from its old power and forcibly pushed away Kixu. The dark red patterned sword stuck to the pink man's arm and bit back like a poisonous snake. This is a move recorded in Extreme Blade, Flowers Hidden in Leaves. Chapter 12. Chu Yu's eyes lit up when she was watching the fight. This move was very clever. Whether it was the grasp of the timing or the strength used, it could be said to be perfect. The knife that even Chu Yu was amazed at did not go so well when it landed on the pink guy. As soon as the long sword wrapped around the pink guy's arm, he felt his arm go numb, and the Crying Snow in his hand had no power. The long sword with deep red patterns rushed towards his face like a poisonous snake. The flirtatious pink man's heart trembled, and he completely put away his disdain and became serious, but he was still a long way from winning against himself. The pink guy bent his waist and moved sideways like a cat wagging its tail, avoiding the dangerous sword. After pulling away from him, the pink-haired man couldn't help but exclaim, "Good boy, I underestimated you. Your move flowers hidden in leaves is really brilliant." Chen Chen frowned, retracted the long sword, and as he turned his right hand, the long sword in his hand gave people a sense of oppression in the dim light, as if he was ready to devour anyone. After taking a deep breath, Chen Chen quickly absorbed the experience he had gained from the few encounters just now. He could feel that the flirty pink man had not used his full strength at all. Not only did he not use any physical skills other than swordsmanship, he even restrained his strength for fear of hurting himself. But even so, the crying snow in his hand also made Chen Chen suffer a little. Whenever the swords clashed, a chill would invade Chen Chen's body, and the chill would enter his body with a stinging sensation. If he hadn't used flowers hidden in leaves just now, perhaps this battle would have ended long ago. It seems that we must avoid a stalemate with this sword, otherwise we will be defeated in the long run. Boy, do you still want to fight? I already recognize your strength. The pink man's smile was like a spring breeze, and his tone was raised, showing that he was very excited. After all, he always recognized the sword rather than the person. Although Chen Chen's strength was still a little bit lacking, at least his sword skills had brought him a great surprise. Upon hearing this, Chen Chen raised a simple and innocent smile, but did not stop as the flirtatious man imagined. Instead, he chopped with a knife. The speed of the knife was so fast that it even sounded like a dragon's roar. Chen Chen gave his answer with practical actions. The pink guy's eyes lit up, and without saying anything else, he went up to fight. Although the flirty pink man has recognized him, Chen Chen feels that this is a rare opportunity for actual combat, so of course he has to continue fighting. Moreover, the flirty pink man regarded himself as a senior as soon as he arrived, which made Chen Chen very unhappy. The gloomy villain in Chen Chen's heart once again appeared at an inopportune time, muttering in his heart, "What a joke, before my rebirth, I was also a 30-year-old veteran on the battlefield, how could I be taught a lesson by a non-mainstream kid like you? I must beat the shit out of this little brat." Seeing the two men fighting again, the expression of the man with a crew cut was very interesting. At first, he thought that this ignorant boy would definitely be severely punished by Enk, the flirty pink guy. Unexpectedly, the boy's strength was surprisingly good. Even more unexpectedly, after 2 swords, the boy used the flower hidden in leaves in the extreme blade, which is a very difficult move to learn in the extreme blade. According to the boy himself, he just borrowed the extreme blade from the library yesterday. This guy is AFG genius. The buzz-cut guy lingered over to Chu Yu and whispered to his eldest brother, "Brother, what do you think of this kid?" "This kid is good," Chu Yu said concisely. The buzz-cut man looked at the two people fighting fiercely and asked curiously, "So, big brother, who do you think will win?" Chu Yu pondered for a moment. Nkei's swordsmanship is mainly strange and bizarre, but this kid's knife skills are even more weird. It's a pity that his knife skills are still a little raw. From experience, Nkei is more likely to win. But after saying this, Chu Yu frowned. Chu Yu was not so sure of her own judgment. He knew that Nkei had not tried his best, but what about this kid? Did he try his best? He always felt that there was something more daunting hidden under the latter's body. The battle between Chen Chen and the pink guy has now entered a white-hot stage. If we say that at the beginning, the pink guy only used 3 points of strength, then gradually he used 5 points and even 7 points of strength. He even felt that the boy in front of him was simply a humanoid monster, with terrifying physical strength. Every time his long sword was shaken away, he would slash at it with faster speed and stronger force, and the angle of the long sword became more and more tricky, and the timing became more and more accurate, and every time he got stuck when his old strength was gone and his new strength was not yet born, he would focus on the lower 3 roots. The insidiousness of his sword skills was astonishing. "Senior, don't be distracted during the battle." Chen Chen's words suddenly came from behind the pink guy on the right. The flirtatious pink man's heart jumped, and he backhandedly picked up Kixu and sent her out diagonally. Dang, the swords collided again, and a chill extended from the intersection of the swords to Chen Chen. But how could Chen Chen, who had learned his lesson, allow the chill to invade again? His mind followed his spirit, and the dark red pattern on the black vine long sword flashed a strange luster, and the long sword slid along the sword body of Kixu towards the right arm of the flirtatious pink man holding the sword. In the perception of the pink-haired man, the long sword inexplicably turned into a monster with bloody mouths, biting towards him. The pink guy loosened his grip, and crying Snow was directly knocked away by the long sword. He cried out inwardly, "Oh no," and tried to roll backwards to dodge, but the black vine sword was already against his neck. "You lose." The boy in front of him smiled brightly. The already empty A1 training ground was completely silent. After a moment, the sound of applause was heard. "A great fight." The man with the crew cut did not hide his admiration, and then he tapped Chen Chen's long sword with the red heavy sword in his hand. Chen Chen felt his palm go numb, and the long sword involuntarily fell from NK's neck. Chen Chen looked in surprise at the tall man with a crew cut who walked forward with a heavy sword in his hand. This man was a master. "You are such a jerk. I told you to be arrogant, now you are fine, right? You got taught a lesson by a newcomer." The guy with a crew cut laughed at the flirty pink guy. The pink-haired guy's face turned pale at this time. Hearing the mocking words of the crew-haired guy, he didn't want to fight back. He just clasped his fists towards Chen Chen very reluctantly. Chen Chen also returned the salute, and then said seriously, "Senior, you didn't try your best, but you have been very accommodating to me. I have gained a lot from this battle. Thank you so much, Senior." Chen Chen's words were not just a polite remark. The pink guy was much more reliable than he looked. He only used sword moves to compete with Chen Chen. His sword moves were flexible and tense, which benefited Chen Chen a lot during the battle. The pink guy waved his hands and said somewhat discouragedly, "If I lose, I lose. There's nothing to make up for it." This was the first time that a newcomer put a knife to his neck. The man with the crew cut seemed very excited to see the two people make peace and see new people on the training ground. Come, come," the crew-haired man led Chen Chen to Kaiyu and introduced him. "This is Brother Kaiyu, a descendant of an ancient martial arts family, with the sword Kaiyu, and responsible for teaching the sword Extreme Blade. My name is Oakland, a descendant of the Aoji Sword School, with the sword Glory." "This guy." Oakland smiled and nodded his chin, indicating the direction of the flirty pink man. "My name is Ankh, a descendant of the Baihe River School, with the sword Weeping Snow." Chen Chen nodded upon hearing this, and carefully memorized the information of the three people in his mind. Then, under the strange gazes of the three people, he slightly bowed to Kaiyu and said obediently, "Hello, Teacher Kaiyu." Puff. Two chuckles sounded at the same time, and Yu, who was bowed to by Chen Chen, couldn't help laughing. Chen Chen raised his head and looked at the three people in confusion. Yu gently mocked herself, "Do I look that old already? I'm just a student in the physical training class like you." Chen Chen was a little surprised. A student could actually be responsible for teaching physical skills. This must be a more powerful guy. The pink guy rested for a while, finally recovered and regained his previous spirit. The pink hair flickered, and she rested on Chen Chen's body like she had no bones. "Little classmate, are you surprised? When Lao Ao and I came here for the first time, we had the same reaction as you. However, after being severely beaten by Yu, we were convinced. If you have any objections, you can also come up." Chen Chen resisted the urge to kick the pink-haired jerk away and said rationally, "I have no objection. Senior Yu must be very strong. Although I want to learn from the experience in battle, I don't need to die." The buzz-cut guy laughed. "It seems that this is also a very interesting boy. You haven't introduced yourself yet? I think we might meet each other often in the future." Yu held back her smile and spoke slowly. After thinking for a while, Chen Chen looked up and said seriously, "Chen Chen from the 9th class of physical training has neither a school nor a noble family. I carry a sword." Myron. Chapter 13. Chen Chen, that's enough talk, let's start the practical training course. After some greetings, Chen Chen gained recognition from Ankh and Oakland, and finally began his formal journey of learning physical skills. After the formal classes started, NK changed his dissolute nature and became very serious. At this moment, Yu was like a master who had been teaching for many years, talking eloquently. Before, since there were only 3 of us in the training ground, when I talked about the extreme blade, I often started with the sword, and usually used the fast sword used by Xiaoan and the heavy sword used by Lao Ao as examples. But now that classmate Chen Chen has joined, we can see the application of extreme blade in swordsmanship. At this point, Yu looked at NK, whose face was still a little pale, and said, "It was you who fought with brother Chen Chen just now. Tell me about your battle experience first." NK was in deep thought for a while before he spoke. "In previous battles, I like to use my sword to take an unconventional approach, to overwhelm the enemy with my speed, and to chase and attack the enemy when he cannot react in time. But in the battle with brother Chen Chen, my speed is no longer an advantage. In fact, brother Chen Chen's swordsmanship is even more cunning, which caught me off guard. Chu Yu nodded frequently, expressing her agreement with what NK said. NK continued, although we both used moves from Ultimate Blade during the fight, it is clear that brother Chen Chen is not bound by form when using the sword, and his sword moves are often as he pleases. Although the connection between each sword is a bit awkward, the fact that he is not bound by form has surpassed me in terms of swordsmanship awareness. In future practice, I should not always train according to the moves, but learn to adapt to the situation and follow the situation. Anko was merciless in his own analysis and clearly benefited greatly from this battle. After all, he had been practicing with Oakland for a long time, and the two were familiar with each other's swordsmanship and moves. The battle with Chen Chen made him see more possibilities in the art of swordsmanship. Chu Yu nodded, very satisfied with her student's answer. She turned around and said to Chen Chen in a gentle voice, "What about you? Chen Chen, what are your thoughts on the battle?" Chen Chen pondered for a moment and replied, "I have some feeling about what Senior NK said. However, Senior NK is too modest. As Senior NK said, he is good at using unconventional swords and using fast swords to defeat the enemy. Senior NK's first two swords did make me a little panicked and my steps were unstable. In addition, the coldness brought by Senior NK's sword Crying Snow was also very tricky. But perhaps I trusted my sword too much." Chen Chen turned to NK and said seriously, "Senior relies more on leading people with swords, rather than people controlling swords." NK murmured, "Use the sword to lead the people, and use the people to control the sword." Chen Chen nodded. "When you found out that your first two swords were ineffective and I was able to entangle you with flowers hidden in leaves, your swords started to go haywire." Chu Yu's eyes lit up, and she turned around and looked at Oaklin, who had already looked surprised, before she smiled and said, "Brother Chen Chen is really amazing. These questions. Lao Ao and I have mentioned them to Xiaoan before, but he never took them seriously. I didn't expect that you could observe so many things in just one battle." After being praised several times in a row, Chen Chen smiled a little embarrassedly. NK looked serious and clasped his fists to Chen Chen to show that he was learning. Such a serious expression, coupled with the shaking pink hair on his head, looked particularly funny. Oakland winked at Chen Chen, who looked helpless, as if to say, "Hey, this is how he is so serious about the art of swordsmanship." Chen Chen nodded helplessly, and then spoke again, "After talking about Senior, let me talk about myself. As you said, my sword moves are very awkward. To be honest with you, I have never received any orthodox sword training before, let alone the connection between swords and swords. I don't even know what the basic sword moves are. I have looked for it in the physical skills library, but there are only physical skills there, and no basic martial arts at all." As they were talking, Chen Chen felt that the three of them were too quiet, so he looked up in surprise, only to see Chu Yu and the other two with expressions as if they had seen aliens. Are the seniors surprised? He saw that the three of them looked very surprised, and the pink-haired Ankh even had his mouth wide open, looking as if he was deeply shocked. "You've never received formal training?" Anko and Oakland shouted in unison. If it weren't for the consideration of her dignity as a teacher, Kaiouya would have almost cried out along with Ankh and Oakland. "Ah, that's right, but I have seen other people use swords, so I still have some impression." Chen Chen quickly tried to make up for it, so as not to seem too exaggerated. "Just by watching others use swords, can you reach this level?" Chu Yu and the other two felt that their worldviews had somewhat collapsed. The three of them were silent for a moment, looking at each other. No wonder Chen Chen said that he had just taken the extreme blade from the library yesterday, and he came here just because he had a lecture today. It turned out that it was not that Chen Chen rushed in based on his interest without knowing more about it, but that this person felt that he finally had a chance to learn the art of swordsmanship, so he came here. NK felt a dryness in his throat and said tremblingly, "So, you defeated me with the sword skills you learned in just one day." Chen Chen. Chen Chen thought to himself, it's over, this is not a good answer. If I tell him that not only did I master my swordsmanship in one day, but my sword was made only 10 minutes ago, will Senior NK collapse? After choosing his words, Chen Chen hesitated and said, it's just a coincidence, just a coincidence. Besides, my swordsmanship can't even be called that." NK waved her hand, indicating that Chen Chen didn't need to continue. "Hey," Chen Chen sighed and touched his head. Oakland on the side sighed with glee, thinking that it was a good thing that he and Chen Chen had not fought, otherwise, he would be the one suffering the most. Oakland walked over to Anko and patted him on the shoulder. Nkei looked a little frustrated, but still thanked his brother. Chu Yu also touched Nkei's head and smiled bitterly. When people see a genius, their first reaction is often shock, and their second reaction is discouragement and frustration. How can one not feel disappointed when the level that one has achieved after more than 10 years of swordsmanship is only a few days for others? But Kaihuya was much more relaxed than Ankh and laughed out loud. Then it is such an honor for the three of us to have witnessed the birth of a genius. Chen Chen was about to refuse, but Chu Yu smiled and shook her head, so Chen Chen had to swallow what he was about to say. Chu Yu continued, everyone, don't feel pressured or discouraged by the title of genius, or feel that you don't live up to the title. The most important thing is to always maintain your swordsmanship. Geniuses are like stars, and there are countless of them. In different eras, people will always witness the birth of different stars. There is no need to belittle yourself, just stick to your heart. But remember, only when the stars shine, can the sky of swordsmanship last forever. The stars must also be polished before they can shine. Only when they are little can they become the sun. As soon as the words fell, the empty A1 training ground fell silent. Chen Chen's heart was like a storm. Although Chu Yu's words were gentle, they were like the sound of a huge bell to him. Chu Yu's broad mind and broad knowledge almost moved him. Kaiyu's view on genius is so thorough, so is Chen Chen. In his 10 years on the battlefield, how many geniuses had Chen Chen seen being born, and how many geniuses had fallen? As Chu Yu said, only when the stars shine, the sky will be eternal, and only when every bit of light is spared, can a torch be as bright as the sun. Since his rebirth, he has never thought of revenge. Isn't it because he thinks that all this is meaningless? In the darkness brought by the fog, everyone is walking alone. What's the point of worrying about these trivial matters of life and death? Only by making yourself stronger can you become a star, illuminate yourself, and dispel the fog. I understand, brother. Nkei no longer dwelled on his failure and smiled at Chu Yu. After this short battle, Nkei felt like he had been reborn. Sometimes, the turning point in life happens in that second. Chen Chen, since you have never received any formal training, let's start from scratch and pick up the basics bit by bit. Together, we will polish a new star. Chu Yu touched the boy's head and smiled gently. Chen Chen's eyes became wet and he bowed slightly. This was a more formal ceremony of paying homage to his master. Chapter 14. Crash. Heavy rain fell, covering the entire city of life in rain and fog. The sound of swords breaking through the air was heard constantly in the A1 training room. In just 2 hours, Chu Yu explained to Chen Chen the basic sword techniques. Swordplay is different from swordplay. It has 8 basic moves: lift, stab, intercept, block, collapse, chop, wipe, pull and wrap. Compared with the delicate sword moves are undoubtedly more dangerous. In the battle between Chen Chen and Nkei, although the sword moves changed freely, the connection between the swords was still very awkward. The reason was that Chen Chen had no idea about the basic sword moves and could not fill in the gaps between each one, so the movements were not coherent. After connecting the basic moves in series, these blanks were finally filled. Yumiran the long sword shook violently and slashed out from the upper side. The dark red pattern looked even more bloody in the dim environment. Chu Yu, who was standing by, carefully watched Chen Chen use his sword, frowning slightly. He always felt that something was missing. In the previous battle with Nkei, Chen Chen's sword skills were still awkward, and there was nothing strange about them. Now that the basic sword moves had filled the gap, the feeling of disharmony was prominent. What exactly is the problem? Chu Yu stretched out his right hand and rubbed his chin. Nkei also stopped training at this time. It seemed that he also realized something. Nkei looked at Chen Chen's sharp sword movements and Chu Yu's pensive expression, thought for a moment, and shouted to Oakland, who was practicing extreme blade in the distance, "Old O, come here and fight Chen Chen." Upon hearing this, Chen Chen stopped what he was doing and looked at Chu Yu and Nkei in confusion. Oakland walked over, also confused. Fight again? But isn't brother Chen Chen training basic sword moves? There's no point in fighting me now, right? Nkei rolled her eyes at him and said unhappily, just fight if you want to. Something must have gone wrong, so I asked you to come over. Something went wrong? Oakland scratched his head. How come he didn't see any problem? Brother Chen Chen's sword was moving faster and faster, but he was also calm and composed. Was there anything wrong? However, Oakland did not continue asking, but directly took up his stance, signaling Chen Chen to start attacking first. Chen Chen understood a little bit. He actually realized that he was not very good at using the knife, but he couldn't find the reason. The black vine longsword made a tentative first move and stabbed towards the lower right side of Oakland. Oakland raised his thick black eyebrows, and probably understood why Ankh had such a hard time fighting with Chen Chen. This kid has no martial ethics at all and plays dirty. The glory of the heavy sword swept down directly, shaking Chen Chen's long sword back. Chen Chen's arm was numb and he took a few steps back. Oakland chuckled, thinking, if Chen Chen still uses the same method to deal with NK, it won't work. He inherited from the Aoji sword school, and his swordsmanship is very open and close. With the heavy sword in his hand, he only needs a very small movement to make it difficult for the enemy to get close. Chen Chen shook his hands and secretly sighed. Senior Oakland and Senior Enko have completely different styles. Compared with the latter, the impact brought by the former's heavy sword is simply on another level. The big, open-ended type. Chen Chen pondered. The black vine sword shook, and the deep red pattern flashed a deep and restrained light. With a thought, the wood element flowed into the sword along Chen Chen's heart and merged with it. Chen Chen's originally sharp aura suddenly changed, as if a peerless demon had awakened from his body. NK's eyes shone. This was the change. What he felt just now was not an illusion. But Chu Yu stared at Chen Chen closely, his eyes focused on Chen Chen's right hand, where his wrist was trembling slightly. Oakland grinned, oh, that's a good momentum, but it's far from enough to scare off a warrior using a heavy sword. After saying that, the heavy sword glory chopped directly towards Chen Chen's face. Oakland thought Chen Chen would panic, but he didn't. A faint smile appeared on that fair young face. Not good. Oakland was startled. However, he was too late to react. The black vine longsword went straight to meet the heavy sword. Then, Chen Chen moved his wrist, and the wood element poured into it. The longsword was like a python, and it actually rotated to the right with the heavy sword. Chen Chen used ultimate blade, python twist. The heavy sword was like a dragon entering a quagmire, unable to move at all. Chen Chen bent his calf slightly, and leaped up. The black vine longsword was like a death knife in the dark night, and went straight to Oakland's heart. At this critical moment, Oakland gritted his teeth, and his body muscles bulged high, and even the muscles turned grey. This is physical technique. Alchemy body. The long knife brushed against his chest, but what was heard was the sharp sound of metal. Swish. The light appeared and Chen Chen narrowed his eyes slightly. Stop. Chu Yu spoke calmly. The two men's bodies trembled at the same time and they withdrew from the fighting state. Chen Chen clasped his fists towards Oakland, put away his knife and stood still. Oakland took a deep breath, released the state of alchemical body, and then returned a salute to Chen Chen. After a while, Oakland smiled bitterly at NK and said, I finally understand your feelings. This guy's swordsmanship can only be described as sinister. He is really a difficult guy. I don't want to meet such an opponent in the college battle. NK rolled her eyes at Oakland and said unhappily, I let you laugh at me, and now you're the one suffering, right? Oakland patted Chen Chen on the back and said, you are awesome, boy. As expected, a genius is still a genius. It turns out that python twist can be used like this. Chen Chen was almost bleeding from this punch. After coughing a few times, Chen Chen smiled and said, thank you. If the seniors didn't want me to get hurt and didn't use other physical skills, I would have been defeated long ago. After exiting the training state, NK resumed her flirtatious personality, threw a wink at Chen Chen, and said, little brother, it's good that you know it, why don't you quickly call me brother? Chen Chen pretended to retch. Oakland laughed loudly, Ankh also smiled and said dead ghost, only Kaiouyu said nothing. NK noticed his brother's expression and remembered the important matter. He immediately patted his head and said, oh, I almost forgot the important matter. I asked you to fight with Lao Ao because I felt that there was something wrong with your swordsmanship. I was so busy watching you two fight that I forgot to observe. Brother, did you see anything? Chen Chen looked at Chu Yu, humbly asking for advice. Kaiouyu circled around Chen Chen, who felt a little embarrassed by her focused gaze, but did not say anything to refuse. Suddenly, Kaiouyu reached out and grabbed Chen Chen. Chen Chen subconsciously raised his hands and blocked his heart and face. Yes, that's it, I found the problem. Kaiyu's voice suddenly became much louder. Chen Chen was even more confused and bewildered. NK took a step back and looked at Chen Chen's blocking action with her peach blossom eyes. After a while, she said with a bit of a smile, "Little brother Chen Chen, you can't tell the difference between your left and right hands." Chen Chen uttered a puzzled sound and looked at his arm which he raised subconsciously. "It's the left arm." Chen Chen's eyes widened. "That's right, brother Chen Chen, the hand you subconsciously stretched out to block was your left hand, but the hand holding the knife was your right hand." Oaklin slapped his head and suddenly realized. Silence, silence. It turns out that for all these years, Chen Chen had not known that his dominant hand was actually his left hand. Ha 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 ha. The three of them burst into laughter, and Aang even laughed to the point of tears. But Chu Yu's sudden words made Aang and Oakland's smiles stuck in their throats. "So, brother Chen Chen defeated you with his right hand which is not the dominant hand." Aang and Oakland could no longer laugh, but Chen Chen burst out laughing. "Haha, that's enough, we just need to find the problem." Chu Yu touched Chen Chen's head like an older brother, and then said, "But, little brother Chen Chen, you are really something. You haven't discovered it in all these years? If I hadn't observed that your right hand always trembles unnaturally when you exert force, I don't know when you would have realized it. You are too slow." Chen Chen smiled a little embarrassedly. I have always been watching the children around me learn, so I didn't pay attention to this kind of thing. No wonder I felt it was difficult to use my right hand when I was a child, and I was always scolded by the teacher." NK asked doubtfully, "No way, didn't my parents notice it?" Chen Chen hesitated for a moment before whispering, "I don't have any parents. I grew up in an orphanage." The training ground became quiet again. Everything made sense now, why Chen Chen was so talented in physical training, but had never received any relevant training, why he was still unclear about his dominant hand even after growing into a teenager. NK wanted to slap herself twice and looked at Chen Chen with an apologetic look. Chen Chen was a little bit at a loss when he was suddenly stared at by everyone. He lowered his head, not knowing what to say. Oakland coughed dryly a few times, pulled Chen Chen over, tucked his head under his armpits, and laughed. "It's not too late for little brother Chen Chen to know now. Little brother Chen Chen is indeed a genius in swordsmanship. He is so good at using the sword with his non-dominant hand. If he switches to his left hand, he will be able to kill everyone. This is also a unique move in battle. Right. When the other party thinks you have used all your strength, you can switch to holding the knife with your left hand and scare them to death." NK quickly agreed. Chen Chen laughed, and the atmosphere in the training ground became harmonious again. In fact, Oaklin and Aang's ideas were very accurate, and Chen Chen later proved with actual actions how much psychological impact the left hand to right hand trick would have on the enemy. However, what Oaklin and Aang didn't know was that just as the two of them didn't use too much physical skills other than sword moves, Chen Chen didn't use his full strength at all. At least, his black vines had already been stirring inside his body. "Let's train." Chu Yu's voice brought everyone back to training again. This time, Chen Chen finally used his dominant hand, his left hand. His movements were no longer unstable, but became more fluent and natural. An hour later, the campus radio sounded, "All students, please note, the practical skills teaching has ended. Please leave the venue in an orderly manner. The report is over." After saying goodbye to the three people, Chen Chen left the school. After Chen Chen came out, the rain suddenly got heavier. The sky, which was already drenching with rain, was now filled with flashes of lightning, which occasionally illuminated the entire dark world. Chen Chen was holding a black umbrella, walking on the road to East District Freedom Park. On his right arm, there was a line of transparent numbers counting down, 10141920. There are still 10 days, 14 hours, 19 minutes, and 20 seconds left. Chapter 15. Click, click. The raindrops fell on the black umbrella, making a crisp sound. Chen Chen looked up at the sky and a flash of lightning flashed across the sky, illuminating Chen Chen's extremely dark pupils. Stretching out his arm, Chen Chen glanced at the number on it, 10135409. There are still 10 days, 13 hours, 54 minutes, and 09 seconds left. A little girl happened to pass by wearing a yellow duck raincoat, holding a big golden retriever dog also wearing a raincoat. The little girl was a little curious when she saw this strange big brother stretching his arms out of his thin white shirt on a cold rainy day. "Brother, why are you walking here alone? It's raining, Go home quickly. When the little girl spoke, her cheeks bulged, which was very cute, and Chen Chen couldn't help laughing. He glanced at the arm with the transparent number, slowly squatted down, and said to the little girl, "Big brother is on the way home." As he spoke, he stretched out his arm and waved it forward. Chen Chen smiled and observed the girl's reaction to his arm. The little girl looked in the direction of the arm, her eyes lingering on the white arm for just a very brief moment before moving away, and her chubby little hand reached out directly. Chen Chen's heart tightened. But the girl's hand just gently rubbed the place with the number, and came to the place where Chen Chen's sleeves were rolled up. The girl pulled the sleeves down with great effort, until the sleeves covered Chen Chen's wrists, and then she stopped with a grunt. "Big brother. My mom told me that we can't expose our hands and legs outside on rainy days, or we will catch a cold." Chen Chen finally felt relieved. It seemed that other people couldn't see this number. After letting out a sigh of relief, Chen Chen smiled and said, "Brother got it. Thank you, little friend. Go back early, or your mother will be worried." The little girl nodded and smiled sweetly. Just when he was about to leave with the big golden retriever, it stood there unobediently, as if it had a special liking for rainy days and wanted to play in the water with its little master. "Da Huang. You are not a good boy. Stop playing in the water. We have to leave. Mom is waiting for us at home." The girl dragged the rope and walked a few steps, but she couldn't pull the big golden retriever. Chen Chen narrowed his eyes slightly, and when the little girl turned around, the black vine came out from her chest. The crimson poppy with its spiral teeth stopped directly above the golden retriever, and the misty eye in the center of the flower directly faced the golden retriever's eyes. The big golden retriever's human-like pupils dilated with fear, and it whimpered and ran away with its tail between its legs. The girl was also led forward by the leash, shouting, "Da Huang, slow down." Gradually, the girl and the dog ran away. Chen Chen chuckled, and Poppy rubbed her face very intimately. Chen Chen also touched Poppy's deep red petals affectionately. Chen Chen didn't notice that when the girl was being pulled forward by the big dog, she turned back to look at this strange big brother. In the heavy rain, through the little yellow duck raincoat, the girl saw that there seemed to be something black wrapped around the big brother's thin body, and the big brother was gently stroking something that looked like a flower. Even though she couldn't see the big brother's expression clearly, the little girl could feel that this big brother seemed to be a very gentle person. 10 minutes later, Chen Chen arrived at the large fountain in the center of the East District Freedom Garden. Chen Chen raised his head, tilted his umbrella back a bit, and stared at the magic crystal fountain in front of him. The huge fountain base is made of large pieces of blue magic crystal, which is crystal clear and very beautiful. The fountain on the top was not turned on because of the rain. Only rain kept falling along the golden angel statue on the fountain, as if the angel was crying for the world. Chen Chen stretched out his right arm, and the numbers on his arm had changed to 10134307. What does this countdown mean? Could it be that in 10 days, a foggy door will open here? Thinking of this, Chen Chen felt overwhelmed. If he remembered correctly, it was he who opened the door in the foggy sea. If this foggy door really opens in the park 10 days later and releases monsters, Chen Chen will never be able to forgive himself. No, calm down. Chen Chen frowned and warned himself. First of all, the entire perimeter of the City of Life is filled with magic crystal pillars, and the fog cannot penetrate at all. The magic crystal pillars that are gradually eroded by monsters will be replaced soon. Unless the fog suddenly strengthens, the City of Life will still be an extremely solid fortress. Secondly, the mist gate he saw in his dream was also different from the one he had seen on the eastern battlefield before. The mist gate in that world was made of gold, inlaid with gems, and was even more ancient and gorgeous. Most importantly, the gate did not give him an evil feeling. Finally, Chen Chen could feel that the foggy sea was very kind to him and was also controlled by his consciousness. So, this conscious sea would definitely not want to bring about things that Chen Chen subconsciously regarded as disasters. After thinking about it, Chen Chen felt much more at ease. He looked at the countdown on his arm again and thought clearly. Now there was only one thing he had to confirm. Chen Chen's mind quickly recalled the scene of opening the golden mist door. He raised his right hand and whispered to the huge magic crystal fountain, "Open sesame." It was quiet all around. Chen Chen closed his eyes, and all visible sight disappeared. The rain seeped in along the edge of the black umbrella and fell on the ends of Chen Chen's hair. Although the tangible world disappeared, the intangible world appeared in Chen Chen's perception. At this moment, Chen Chen opened his eyes, and a mist flashed across his extremely dark pupils. The huge magic crystal fountain disappeared, and was replaced by an ancient, golden misty door. At the same time, the transparent numbers on Chen Chen's arm began to heat up and turned from transparent to golden yellow. With a thought, Chen Chen tried to push the door in front of him with his consciousness, but the door was steady and did not move at all. Chen Chen frowned, looked at the golden number on his arm, and sighed. It seemed that only when the number counted down, the door would open. Chen Chen casually put his right hand into his pocket, took another look at the foggy door that was about to disappear in front of him, and walked out of the park without any reluctance. Click! Chen Chen used the key to open the door of his cottage. When he opened the door and walked in, a small note suddenly fell down, landing in front of Chen Chen like a snowflake. Chen Chen reached out to catch the note, casually guessing what the note was: a utility bill from the landlord? A challenge from a gangster in the alley? Or a late-night invitation from a stranger who went astray? The slender fingers brushed away the small note, and 2 lines of large characters and a silly expression package first caught Chen Chen's eyes. Darling, do you remember me? I am Asu from the prosecutor's office. The sudden attack almost broke Chen Chen's waist. Chen Chen curled his lips, feeling for no reason that Asu might have a lot in common with the pink-haired senior N.K. Lang Ning and I looked for you this morning and at noon, but you were not there. You are indeed a restless teenager. However, young people should be energetic, which is gratifying. However, if this is the case, we will not be able to hand over this gift that reflects our sincerity to you in person. And I swear to you by the honor of the procuratorate that the existence of this gift itself is a miracle. So, in order to avoid both of us having to go out, please spare an afternoon this week and come to the prosecutor's office. Lang Ning and I will prepare the freshest cakes to treat you. Have a nice day. Asu and Lang Ning. A miracle. Chen Chen folded the note in half and put it in his pocket, then stepped into the hut. The dilapidated iron door made a crisp sound and was closed. Chapter 16. Chen Chen yawned loudly. Looking at the teacher on the stage who was passionately talking about the history of mainland China, Chen Chen's vision became blurred due to tears. Chen Chen glanced out the window casually. It was still a gloomy and rainy day outside, but it was particularly lively at this time. Even an insensitive person like Chen Chen could sense the restlessness in the air. However, it is understandable. The college battle is about to begin, and the students are busy making preparations. The training ground, library, and even the playground are packed with people. The college battle, as one of the most important events in the City of Life, is responsible for supplying supernatural talents to the military and the Hunter Association, and is open to 8 colleges. Even ordinary people will pay close attention to this game and will watch the live broadcast and some replays on time. After all, the people selected in this competition will become their patron saints. Although this statement is a bit exaggerated, it is true. After all, only those with special powers can enter the Gate of Mist, obtain magic crystals, and make magic crystal pillars to dispel the mist, thereby expanding the territory of their homeland. While those with special powers enjoy various preferential treatments, wealth, and fame, they must be mentally prepared to protect the future of mankind with their lives. This has been the case for thousands of years. In the Battle of Colleges, each student will be ranked according to his or her performance. Each student has 2 chances to participate in the college battle. The first is in the 3rd year of enrollment, that is, when you are in class 6 to class 9, the second is in the 6th year of enrollment, that is, when you are in class 1 to class 3. If you are not satisfied with the first ranking or have objections, you can give up the first ranking and wait 3 years to participate in the college battle again. Overall, it is still very humane. After the 2 academy battles, the students who are still classified as D-level will be assigned to the 8-direction battlefield to serve as logistics supply posts on the battlefield. C-rank students can choose to join the military or the Hunter Association. Students at B rank and above have a relatively free choice. They can choose to join the military, the Hunter Association, the ancient martial arts family, or stay in school to teach. They can even choose to be a lone hunter. As long as they obtain a certificate issued by the Hunter Association, they can freely enter the Mist Gate. Many S-rank masters choose the path of lone hunters. Although after the Academy War, psychics can retest their levels every 5 years, their levels generally stop changing as they age. Therefore, the battle between the academies almost determines the future fate of the psychics. Chen Chen originally wanted to strive for a C rank or higher rank in the academy battle, but as his secrets became more and more, Chen Chen felt that perhaps being a lone hunter would be more suitable for him. This meant that Chen Chen had to get at least a B rank or higher rank. Chen Chen raised his right arm, and the numbers on it had changed to 91843115. There are still 9 days, 18 hours, 43 minutes, and 15 seconds left. I hope that when the Golden Mist Gate opens, it won't collide with the battle at the academy. Otherwise, even Chen Chen will have a headache. Chen Chen stroked the number on his arm, and he suddenly remembered another thing. After the first college war before his rebirth, an A-level fog gate appeared where the remains of the winged man were unearthed. You know, the last time the Misty Gate where the winged people's remains were discovered was 100 years ago. During that adventure, the psychic took out countless magic crystals, gems, and various legendary collections. However, the danger level of the Mist Gate that time was S-level. In other words, this A-level fog gate after the Battle of the Academy is simply a treasure trove with a very high cost effectiveness. Ah, the Feathered Man ruins. I feel like I have more things to do. The prosecutor's office's gift, the Golden Mist Gate, training in Ultimate Blade, the battle at the Academy, the Feathered Man ruins. Just as Chen Chen was immersed in thinking, a note suddenly hit Chen Chen's head with a bang. This familiar feeling, without having to think, I knew it must be coming from Miss Zhongning, the strong lady. Chen Chen's mouth twitched slightly, and he sighed in his heart about the indissoluble bond between himself and the little note. While opening the note, Chen Chen, let's have lunch together. If you run away again this time, I will beat you up. Zhongning. Chen Chen looked over and saw a girl with a high ponytail and a bright smile raising her fist, as if to say that if he dared not agree, he would be in trouble. Chen Chen looked at the girl's youthful smile and felt very happy. He nodded, indicating that he agreed. The girl's pretty face turned a little red, and she straightened her nose in pretense of pride, then opened the textbook as if pretending to listen to the class carefully. In canteen number 1. Chen Chen placed 2 lunches on the table, handed the girl a pair of chopsticks, and then sat down. The girl took the chopsticks and whispered, "You're sensible," before sitting down leisurely. Chen Chen smiled and started to eat the small piece of chicken wing in front of him. The girl opposite him also changed her previous carefree attitude and started to drink the pork rib soup in small sips. Chen Chen looked up for a while, then said nonchalantly, "What's wrong? Don't you like today's food? You only ate a little bit, you don't seem like yourself anymore." The girl choked and said unhappily, "I'm losing weight." Zhongning didn't know what was wrong with him. He always felt that the young man in front of him seemed to have been reborn since a few days ago, like a piece of unpolished jade that suddenly burst into its own light after careful carving. The bangs that used to cover his eyes were lifted up, revealing his extremely dark eyes. The back that was always timidly bent suddenly straightened up, and with the thin and graceful figure of the young man, there was always a moving life force. Most importantly, the gloomy aura in his body seemed to be swept away, and the young man always had a smile on his lips that was hard to read, and it was really blushing. As he thought about it, Zhongning felt his face starting to get hot. The atmosphere between the boys and girls is very harmonious, allowing onlookers to feel the shyness of youth, but such a scene does not look that way to some people. A boy with narrow eyes looked at the handsome man and beautiful girl in front of him and asked a classmate next to him in a sarcastic tone, "Who is this boy? Why is he sitting next to Zhongning?" The student being asked looked at the man and woman who were talking and laughing in front of him, and was also very surprised. He shook his head and said that he didn't know. The long-eyed man clenched his fists tightly and stared at the 2 men with an unfriendly look, especially at Chen Chen's pretty face, as if he was looking at the man who had stolen his wife. Where did this idiot come from? Don't you know that Zhongning is the one that I, Chen Fei, like? The classmate next to the long-eyed boy rolled his eyes slightly and complained in his heart, "Is it strange that I don't know you, Chen Fei? Do you really think you are someone like Fikna and Kai Yufeng? At the very least, you have to be someone like Kaiyu, Aokilan, and Ank." However, although this classmate secretly complained in his heart, he still echoed the long-eyed man, "Oh, right, right, right." He didn't even bother to ask how powerful Element Class 3's boss Chen Fei is. He actually asked his junior Zhongning out for dinner so blatantly. It's unforgivable. Chen Fei stared at Chen Chen and Zhongning, and when he saw Zhongning occasionally looking up and stealing glances at the boy opposite, he became even more furious. The whimpering sound of the wind could be heard in the space around him. The strong wind knocked over some plates and chairs, and everyone cried out in surprise and quickly stood up to see what was happening. Chen Chen paused while eating the cabbage, and noticed the commotion. After merging with Poppy, Chen Chen's sensitivity to the elements became very acute. Is this a wind element? Is there someone around who has released an elemental skill? Chen Chen looked up and saw a long-eyed man wearing a black vest and with a fierce look on his face, walking towards him angrily with a boy who looked like a follower. Chapter 17. After Chen Chen took a look at the long-eyed man who was coming at him aggressively, he lowered his head and put the cabbage into his mouth with chopsticks. Chen Fei's eyebrows stood up, looking at the boy in front of him in disbelief as he was eating nonchalantly with his head down. If he was not mistaken, this guy looked at him and still kept his head down to eat. You little brat! Before Chen Fei could finish his angry words, Zhang Ning stood up with a cold expression on her pretty face. Chen Fei, what are you doing here? Hearing the goddess' angry question, Fei Chen restrained his tone, but still looked at Chen Chen fiercely. Zhang Ning, I know you rejected my feelings, but what does it mean that you are having dinner with this pretty boy now? Zhang Ning said coldly, what is my relationship with you? What obligation do I have to explain to you? Although Zhang Ning was carefree, he was not a pure naive person. How could he not see that Chen Fei was here to cause trouble for Chen Chen? Not wanting to bring an unexpected burden to Chen Chen, Zhang Ning immediately said, Chen Fei, do you want to be punished for using elemental skills in a non-combat environment? The college battle is imminent, are you sure you want to do such a stupid thing? Zhang Ning's remarks can be described as steady, accurate, and ruthless. First, he directly distanced himself from Chen Fei, then he found out what was wrong with Chen Fei causing trouble in the cafeteria, and finally he threatened Chen Fei with the battle of the academy so that he would not dare to act rashly. Chen Chen silently gave Zhang Ning a thumbs up. Chen Fei suffered a loss and could only avoid Zhang Ning, whose words were as sharp as a knife, and turned to provoke Chen Chen, who was silent and could only hide behind the woman. Boy, you only know how to hide behind a woman? Are you still a man? Chen Fei thought that any man with a backbone would not tolerate such provocation. As long as Chen Chen responded to his provocation, he would take the opportunity to propose a duel on the martial arts field, so that he could teach this ignorant pretty boy a lesson openly. The people around heard that there seemed to be something to eat, and gradually gathered around. However, after seeing the protagonist involved in the incident, their expressions were a little subtle. The most charming girl is Zhang Ning, the famous monitor of the 9th physical training class. Zhang Ning was tested at the intermediate level of C-rank physical training during the entrance test, and is expected to reach the B-rank physical training monster in the first school battle. Opposing him was Chen Fei, who was also a little famous from the element class 3. After studying in school for 6 years, he became a C-rank high-level wind-type mutant and always regarded himself as the man of Zhang Ning's future. However, what surprised the crowd the most was not these two people, but the thin young man in a white shirt who was only focused on eating. This young man, oh no, big guy, used his abnormal physical strength and endurance to sweep the entire school's physical training circle yesterday. Tell me, how did these three get together? Ah, are you stupid? It's hard to imagine. It's obvious that this is Fei Chen who is causing trouble. He was heartbroken when he saw his beloved Miss Zhang Ning having dinner with another man, so he came here to pick a fight. I bet 30 magic crystal coins that this guy doesn't even know Chen Chen, so he is so reckless. That's right, boss. Chen Chen simply shocked us mortals yesterday. I didn't expect that someone would cause trouble for him so soon. Do we still need to gamble? The training grounds for physical abilities and elemental abilities are originally separate. I guess Senior Chen Fei has no idea what happened yesterday. Oh, fight, fight. Some people were enjoying the fun and seemed extremely excited. Chen Fei picked his ears and yelled at the people around him in annoyance, what are you yelling about? I'm asking this kid, not you. As he spoke, the strong wind knocked over several chairs. Everyone was shocked by the madness and shrugged their shoulders and kept silent. Finally, it's quiet. Chen Fei impatiently pulled a chair over, dragged it near Chen Chen with a clatter, pointed his right finger at Chen Chen's nose, and shouted, you kid, your name is Chen Chen, right? If you're a man, answer me. Didn't your parents teach you basic etiquette? Chen Chen looked at the rice splashed by Chen Fei's saliva and fell silent. His pair of extremely dark eyes were lowered, and a storm was gathering inside. Hey, are you mute? Hey! There was a loud bang. The sticky food slowly slid down Fei Chen's hair. Chen Chen actually slammed the plate of food onto Chen Fei's head. Did I give you face? The young man's cold words echoed in the silence, and obvious displeasure flashed in his extremely dark pupils. Everyone looked at each other and everything was very quiet. Zhang Ning covered her mouth with her slender fingers, looking stunned. She had never expected that Chen Chen would be like this when he got angry. He was totally merciless. Fei Chen slowly bit his back teeth, puffed up his cheeks, lowered his head slightly, and used his big hands to wipe off the food on his head. His furious words seemed to be torn out from his throat. Chen Chen, you're good. Boy, you've completely p'd me off. Chen Chen did not answer, but just gave him the middle finger with an indifferent expression. The flames of war were immediately ignited by Chen Chen's simple action, and everyone present understood one thing: today's matter could not be resolved without a martial arts performance. Everyone was talking about it. Hey, what did I say? Let's start fighting. It's going to be fun, you know what, this battle is going to be exciting. Chen Fei is a veteran who has already participated in a college battle. He even managed to make it into the top 100 of the elite list in the first college battle. Chen Chen is a new boss who has risen recently. I am really looking forward to what will happen when these two fight. It will be exciting. Well, I think this fight should have started a long time ago. These elementalists always think they are superior to others. They look down on us physicalists. They always use Fikna and Kaiyu Feng to step on us openly or secretly. They deserve to be punished. Don't say that. The ratio of physical ability users to elemental ability users is close to 10 to 1. It is very difficult for physical ability users in the early stage to defeat elemental ability users of the same level. There is a reason why they are arrogant. That depends on the later stages. Didn't you see that the strongest people on the elite list are almost all physical ability users? As they talked, everyone seemed to be gradually adding fuel to the fire. The original conflict was between Chen Chen and Chen Fei, but it seemed that the fateful confrontation between the physical and elemental systems was also being dragged into the conflict. Chen Fei stared at Chen Chen with eyes like a wolf and said, Chen Chen. We have a feud. Now what? Let's go to the martial arts arena. If you lose, you must kneel down and apologize to me. And you must promise not to follow Zhang Ning around anymore. Chen Chen frowned and said coldly, I can duel with you, but Zhang Ning should not be part of the bet. She has the right to make her own decision. Respecting women is a necessary quality for a gentleman. Zhang Ning's face, which had been flushed with anger, softened. She blinked her watery eyes and looked at the serious-looking boy. Chen Chen's words made her feel warm in her heart. Chen Fei saw Zhang Ning's eyes turned watery because of this sentence, and he was so angry that his teeth itched. This pretty boy really knows how to please women. Knowing that he had violated a taboo, Chen Fei didn't want to make Zhang Ning unhappy again, so he took a step back. Okay. Since you agree, let's go to the martial arts arena now. As he said this, he was about to walk towards the A3 training ground, which was the nearest to here, but he stopped because of Chen Chen's cold words. Wait, what if you lose? Chen Fei sneered, thinking to himself that this kid was ignorant of the immensity of the world. The Physical Arts Class 9 written on his badge proved that he had only been in school for 3 years. He had not even participated in the school battle, and yet he was still talking nonsense here. If I lose, I will also kneel down and apologize to you. Chen Chen shook his head with amusement. Why do I want you to kneel down and apologize? What good will it do for me? Fei Chen raised his eyebrows and asked frantically, then what do you want? Chen Chen pondered for a moment, then uttered 3 words, I haven't thought about it yet. Everyone. Are you kidding me? Chen Fei raised his voice with incredible anger. Chen Chen shrugged. Chen Chen was not really teasing Chen Fei. He just felt that this competition had no appeal to him at all. On the surface, he was a hot-blooded 16-year-old boy, but in fact, Chen Chen was a 30-something uncle at heart. Kneeling or not was of no interest to him. If Chen Fei hadn't ruined his meal, he wouldn't have bothered to care about him. He still had a lot of things to deal with, such as practicing Extreme Blade, going to the prosecutor's office to see the gift prepared by Asu and Lang Ning, and the Golden Mist Gate that had not yet been opened in the East District Freedom Park. Which one of them was not more important than a quarrel between children? FKU, why are you so slow? Chen Fei scratched his head. His slightly long hair curled together, which made him look a little funny. Chen Chen suddenly remembered the cute little girl and her stubborn golden retriever he met in Freedom Park. He chuckled, and his chuckle turned into a loud laugh. He even laughed until tears came out and he couldn't straighten his back. This was really, Chen Fei hit his weird funny spot. Fei Chen was a little overwhelmed and asked in a bad tone, is there something wrong with you? Everyone looked at the big man in front of them who was laughing in confusion, and felt a little eerie at the back. Chen Chen waved his hands, and it took him a while to calm down. He wiped away the tears from laughing, and said calmly, "Let's go to the A3 martial arts arena." This duel. Chen Chen's voice dragged out for a moment, and then under Chen Fei's murderous gaze, Chen Chen slowly uttered the last few words, "Consider it a gift from me to you." In one sentence, the atmosphere was instantly ignited to the highest point. Chapter 18. The A3 training ground was now crowded with people and noisy. It was originally just a small conflict between students, but because the two protagonists, one is an elemental veteran who was once in the top 100 of the college battle elite list, and the other is a ring-tossing master who suddenly became famous yesterday, and the college battle happened to be imminent, it actually attracted a lot of attention. Even some teachers have joined the spectator seats to lock in potential talents in advance. The martial arts arena was quickly prepared. After 20 magic crystal coins were put in, a protective shield was opened, isolating the stage from the audience. The martial arts arena broadcast also started at this moment. A3 martial arts field preparation duelists, Chen Fei from element class 3, Chen Chen from physical class 9 dual content. Both parties may use all reasonable means to duel, except for the use of banned drugs, and the battle will continue until one party clearly admits defeat. If there is no objection, the battle will begin in 20 seconds. Fei Chen looked at Chen Chen, who had no expression on his face, and was a little surprised. "Hey, kid, where's your weapon?" The crowd watching was also a little confused. They saw that Chen Chen was dressed lightly, not to mention weapons, he didn't even take off his snow-white shirt, looking very relaxed. Zhang Ning clenched her hands tightly. If she remembered correctly, although Chen Chen acted like a different person in the past few days, she had not seen Chen Chen use any physical skills, including weapons. "Oh, how could I be intimidated by his aura? I rushed onto the martial arts stage without even having time to ask anything." Zhang Ning was very upset and blamed himself in his heart. Chen Chen sighed softly. To be honest, he forgot that he had conjured up the long sword on the way. In other words, if he didn't finish his meal, he would definitely miss the opportunity, right? Countdown, 10 seconds. "Hey, kid, why are you always distracted?" Chen Fei shouted in dissatisfaction. He had noticed that this kid was always distracted when he was talking. He didn't know whether he was teasing him on purpose or was born to be distracted. Chen Chen waved his hand and smiled, "Oh, sorry, I forgot to take my weapon." Fei Chen rolled his eyes and said unhappily, "Then go get it now, I'll call for a while." Before he could finish his words, Fei Chen's pupils shrank to the size of a needle tip in an instant. The people in the audience who were originally looking up at the excitement suddenly became quiet. Suddenly, 5 or 6 ferocious and thick black vines emerged from the chest of the young man in a snow-white shirt. The rough skin of the black vines shone with an evil and holy light. At the top of each vine, a bunch of deep red and beautiful flowers bloomed, but what was exposed in the center was not the sweet nectar, but a bunch of naked eyeballs that were either open or closed. In the middle of the flowers, there were layers of fine and sharp teeth, making a creepy chewing sound. The vines lifted the boy high into the air. Several of them flashed green light in the boy's hands and quickly condensed into a long and narrow black vine sword. Coach Zhang, who rushed over from the stands, opened his mouth into an exaggerated O shape. Zhang Ning and the students in Physical Education Class 9 were so shocked that they were speechless. What the FK is this? Isn't this the rare monster Poppy described in the monster book? This green light, wood elemental ability? But isn't Chen Chen a physical ability user? How can one person have two kinds of abilities? Chen Chen ignored the audience's exclamations at this moment. He held the black vine long knife in his right hand, with the tip of the knife pointing directly at Chen Fei. The radio sounded again. Countdown, 3, 2, 1. The duel officially begins. As the sound of start fell, black vines surged towards Chen Fei. In an instant, the entire martial arts arena was covered by a black torrent. Chen Fei's scalp felt numb and he subconsciously took a few steps back. Then he forced himself to calm down and swallowed his saliva. The invisible strong wind around him made a whimpering sound. After a few seconds, the strong wind carried Chen Fei out of the blockade of the black vine cage in a panic. With just one move, Fei Chen almost lost his ability to move. Chen Fei stared at the young man who was suspended in the air surrounded by black vines and swallowed his saliva again. He now realized that he might have provoked an extremely terrifying opponent. The black vine did not restrain Chen Fei, but Chen Chen was not discouraged. Instead, he moved his mind like a dragon and quickly stabbed Chen Fei from the upper right with the knife. The long sword broke through the air as if with divine help. Fei Chen felt that the air in front of him was full of sharpness, and he immediately shouted, "Wind wall!" The invisible wind pressure pushed from Chen Fei to the tip of Chen Chen's knife. Chen Chen snorted coldly, trying to block the attack with his face. How ridiculous! After the tip of the knife was blocked by the wind wall for a moment, it rushed straight to Chen Fei's face without any loss of momentum. At the same time, 3 or 4 black vines attacked from behind Chen Fei, blocking all his ways back. Chen Chen showed no mercy when he attacked. You know, even a lion will use all its strength to fight a rabbit. What's more, the Chen Fei in front of him is not a little rabbit to be slaughtered, but an experienced master of elemental powers. Fei Chen bit the tip of his tongue and forced himself to stay calm. With his right hand raised, the wind element quickly condensed, and Fei Chen shouted coldly, "Secret skill, Wind Dragon Claw." As Chen Fei finished speaking, Chen Chen's long sword was pushed away by an invisible force, and it unexpectedly changed its direction, and the long sword missed. Chen Chen's eyes lit up, and the corners of his mouth raised with interest. Looking closely, a pale blue shadow appeared behind Chen Fei. In the shadow, a real dragon stretched out its claws, and a huge wind tornado was forming between its claws. The wind tornado roared towards Chen Chen like a meat grinder. This wind was no ordinary wind. It contained pure wind elements compressed to the extreme, and each gust came like an overwhelming force like a sharp blade. The black vine wrapped Chen Chen and quickly retreated, and the hard surface was scratched by the wind blade, leaving white marks. Chen Chen put his arms in front of his face, a blooming poppy blocking his heart, and retreated quickly. There was a crackling sound and the confrontation between the two men paused for a moment. The originally very quiet viewing platform erupted into thunderous applause. What a wonderful duel! In just a few minutes, they witnessed a battle of extremely high level. The black vines summoned by Chen Chen were incredible, and his excellent combat awareness was also admirable. As a veteran student, Chen Fei's calm response and powerful elemental skills were also impressive. Some people exclaimed, "Ah, is this really a battle that we can watch before the academy battle without paying?" As expected of him being in the top 100 of the elite list, Senior Chen Fei is really calm and composed. If I were there, I would be scared to death by that big shot. Oh, hurry up and call Xiao Lindsay over, this is too exciting. Yes, I can't be the only one seeing this kind of good stuff. But some old students with sharp eyes also saw some problems. Oh my goodness, there's actually a dual attribute psychic. This hasn't been heard of in the continent for hundreds of years, right? However, this guy seems to be a bit clumsy in using dual attribute elements, and the coordination between the two is not tight. Zhang Ang, also known as Coach Zhang, who was on the second floor stand, took a sip of the tea he brought with him. He looked at Chen Chen in the field with cloudy eyes, and his eyes showed his shock. I didn't expect that in addition to his outstanding physical talent, he also has the ability of wood element. It's just that he is a little immature. Well, he is still a child, and he will improve in the future. We must let the dean notice it as soon as possible. People with dual attribute abilities will definitely shine in the college battle. Of course, in addition to these, there are also unique people among the onlookers. Mom, I'm in love. Little brother Chen Chen is so handsome. Everyone was in complete frenzy. However, the people fighting on the stage are feeling very strange now. Chen Fei wiped the cold sweat from his face. The cold feeling of the knife tip pointing directly at his face still made him feel frightened. I underestimated you. Chen Fei murmured, and then he could no longer suppress his inner shock and sighed sincerely, he is actually the legendary dual attribute psychic. At this time, Chen Chen also opened his crossed arms and controlled the black vine to lower itself a little to the ground, then smiled at Chen Fei without giving any indication of whether it was okay or not. The tense atmosphere between the two eased a little. Sometimes, men are so strange. Two people who were originally at loggerheads will start to become friendly after a fight, as the saying goes, no fighting, no acquaintance. Chen Fei looked at Chen Chen's black vines that were shining with deep light and the strange crimson flowers, and said softly, however, I have never seen such a wood-type ability. It can actually be so compatible with the body of the ability user. Chen Chen kept smiling and said lazily, read more books. Fei Chen sighed, come again. After a word, the two started the second round. Chapter 19. I have to say that Chen Chen had a great time fighting with Chen Fei in this brief round. Although Chen Chen had fought with Aang and Oaklin before, Aang and Oaklin could only be regarded as purely exchanging sword moves with Chen Chen. Aang and Oaklin were definitely stronger than Chen Fei. From the physical skill alchemy body that Oaklin used at the end, it can be seen that they did not use their full strength at all. Chen Chen's lips curled up slightly. He did want to test his true strength, and Chen Fei came at the right time. Chen Chen's sword shook, and his aura changed completely. The originally scattered aura was completely restrained, the deep red patterns on the black vine sword glowed with a faint luster, and more thick black vines emerged from Chen Chen's heart, making Chen Chen look like a god or demon descended to the earth. More than a dozen black vines attacked Chen Fei from all sides at the same time. The deep red poppies on the top of the black vines also opened their bloody mouths, as if they wanted to swallow Chen Fei in one gulp. The long sword in Chen Chen's hand had almost left an afterimage, and it shot out from the black vines like a dragon emerging from the sea. In an instant, all of Chen Fei's retreat routes were blocked. Chen Chen's sword is the dragon emerging from the sea among the ultimate blades. Chen Fei gritted his teeth and planned to use secret skill, Wind Dragon Claw again, but the move was old, so how could Chen Chen give him this chance? Just when the strong wind element locked onto Chen Chen again, the black vines blocked Chen Fei's sight like a curtain, and Chen Chen's figure suddenly disappeared like the moon in the water. Chen Fei was shocked. The wind element energy on the field began to become somewhat chaotic. There was a sudden sharp pain from behind, and Chen Fei turned his head immediately, but it was too late. The black vine long sword, with the sound of breaking through the air, was already just a millimeter away from Chen Fei's neck. There was total silence in the audience. Chen Fei stared blankly at the tip of the knife and the narrow blade, then looked up and saw Chen Chen's face, half bright and half dark, shrouded by black vines. Chen Fei's body trembled, and he couldn't help but drag his body backwards. When he was about to stand up, he was frightened by the enlarged bloody mouth of Papaver and the exposed eyeball in the center, and he collapsed to the ground. "Ah, you lose." Chen Chen spoke gently. However, against the backdrop of the terrifying black vines and strange flowers, it was creepy no matter how you looked at it. Upon hearing this, Fei Chen opened his lips and uttered a few words unwillingly. After a long while, "I admit defeat." As soon as the voice fell, the martial arts arena broadcast immediately sounded. A3 Martial Arts Arena Battle ends. Duelists, Chen Fei from Element Class 3, Chen Chen from Physical Class 9. Duel result, Chen Chen wins. The onlookers were in an uproar at this moment. Wow! Awesome! Boss Chen Chen, the king of ring tossing, the eternal god. Whu, in this year's student battle, my physical training department boss Chen Chen will definitely have a place on the elite list. Ah, so handsome. I need to ask for his contact information. Zhang Ang, who was standing on the second floor viewing platform, looked at the calm young man in the field with his cloudy eyes and keenly realized that this would be a rising star. A young man with such powerful dual attribute abilities, who has never participated in the college war but defeated senior students in the top 100 of the elite list by himself, will surely attract attention from the military, the Hunter Association and other parties. It is conceivable how many people will extend their olive branches to this young man with unlimited potential before the college war. Zhang Ang took a sip of the wolfberry tea in his hand, brushed his heart which was a little unbalanced due to the shock, and murmured, "After so many years, our Northeastern College has produced such a genius. It is really a blessing from our ancestors. I really hope that such a talent will not be tainted by those guys in the United Front Work Bureau." Then he thought of something and quickly left the second floor stands. Bang! The protective shield of the martial arts arena is activated. Chen Chen helped Chen Fei up from the slumped position on the ground and smiled gently, "Are you okay, senior?" Chen Fei smiled bitterly and shook his head, saying, "It's okay." He stood up with the help of Chen Chen's arm. Chen Fei thought to himself, how embarrassing it is that he was so scared by the other party's momentum that he sat down on the ground. Chen Chen looked at the other party's bitter smile, not caring at all, and instead teased, "Senior, have you thought about what you are going to do if you lose?" Chen Fei looked at Chen Chen helplessly, and said dejectedly, "I am willing to accept the loss, junior brother, you can speak." Although Chen Fei was still upset because Chen Chen took Zhang Ning away, he was not a man who went back on his word. Chen Chen glanced at Chen Fei calmly. Although Chen Fei's words sounded quite heroic, he still noticed that the latter swallowed nervously and his Adam's apple was rolling up and down restlessly. Chen Chen shook his head, not wanting to take advantage of anyone, and said straightforwardly, "Then, please go to the cafeteria and buy 2 more meals." Chen Fei's tense face was blank for a second. What? Chen Fei looked at the boy with a bright smile in disbelief and asked tremblingly, that's it? Chen Chen shook his head with amusement, what else? Chen Fei gritted his teeth and said He probably knew why Zhang Ning preferred to be with Chen Chen. The two of them got off the martial arts stage together and were immediately surrounded by the crowd, especially Chen Chen's side, which was so crowded that he couldn't move at all. Boss, you are so awesome. I really worship you. Is this the legendary dual attribute psychic? I actually saw one alive today. Chen Chen was speechless, and thought to himself, otherwise he would just die. However, he still said politely to the students around him, thank you all for coming, but Senior Chen Fei and I have something else to do, so we'll go first. Everyone nodded and made way for him. Some people even said in a rude tone, Chen Chen, please be gentle. Chen Fei is already a senior in the academy and can't stand the hassle. Everyone listened and smiled pervertedly. Chen Chen looked at the person who was speaking with amusement, and when he looked closely, he realized that this was the little follower beside Chen Fei. As expected, after Chen Fei recovered, he said angrily, you kid, you deserve a beating, right? I can't beat Chen Chen, but I can't beat you either. Believe it or not, I will beat the shit out of you. The little follower who was named shrank his head and hid behind the crowd. Chen Chen shook his head and said, let's go. Oh. After hearing Chen Chen's words, Fei Chen put away his fist. Somehow, his face turned strangely red. Pulling Zhang Ning aside, Chen Chen swaggered out of the martial arts arena with Chen Fei and headed straight for the cafeteria. Chapter 20. After ordering 2 more meals, Chen Fei sat opposite Chen Chen and Zhang Ning with a dusty face. Chen Chen didn't say much, he just stretched out his chopsticks, picked up a small potato from the plate, and started eating. Learning from the last lesson, he ate a lot faster this time. Zhang Ning at the side didn't eat much, but looked at Chen Chen hesitantly, and said hesitantly, Chen Chen, were you a dual attribute mutant before? Chen Chen stopped eating and said, no. Zhang Ning's pretty face wrinkled up and asked, then, the black vine that appeared during the battle. Chen Chen put down his chopsticks and glanced at Chen Fei who was sitting opposite him. Chen Fei was suddenly stared at by Chen Chen. He felt a little embarrassed. He hummed a little tune in panic and turned his head away, no longer looking at Chen Chen and Zhang Ning. It seemed that he was not curious about their conversation at all. Chen Chen then turned around and explained to Zhang Ning, it's like this. I ran into a pair of thugs in an alley before, and they beat me up. I fell to the ground unconscious. Later, when I woke up again, I found that all my wounds had healed, and there was an extra elemental force in my body. Zhang Ning widened his eyes, appearing to be very surprised by such a thing. Chen Chen continued, Deputy Director Axu and Prosecutor Lang Ning of the East District Prosecutor's Office helped me investigate. I was probably saved by Ms. Matherine, an S-level healer who was nearby. Unfortunately, Ms. Matherine was in the last stage of her life, so I must have inherited her legacy by chance. Thanks to his rebirth, Chen Chen has experienced a lot of things, so that now he can tell such lies without blushing or feeling nervous. Ah, that's so lucky. Fortunately you are okay and have obtained such power. Zhang Ning sighed. Chen Fei at the side also interrupted, that's right, what kind of shit luck do you have? You can even meet a legendary figure like an S-rank healer. Chen Chen chuckled and said nothing. He picked up the chopsticks again and said to Fei Chen, Senior Chen Fei, don't just stand here and watch the fun. I'm a little curious about the upcoming school battle. Didn't you participate in a school battle before? We want to hear you share the process and content. Zhang Ning said quickly, we roughly know the first 2 levels, and we will mainly talk about the legendary secret 3rd level and the so-called elite list. The first and second levels of the academy battle are open to the public and will be broadcast live, so most people are aware of them. The first round of the college battle is a draw duel. Each student needs to participate in 10 PKs. After 10 games, the C and D grades will be released. This also means that students classified as C and D grades will be eliminated in the first round. The second round adopts a point-based melee mode. One head counts as 10 points, and the rating is determined based on the points and on-site performance. The rules of the first and second levels seem to be greatly affected by luck, but in fact they are not. First of all, the 10 PK matches in the first round can basically expose the strength of most people, identify the C and D level students and eliminate them, and also avoid them being forcibly killed in the second round. The melee in the second level is a reflection of comprehensive strength. In a real battlefield, except for those who are extremely powerful, no real lone wolf player can clear a fog gate alone. Team collaboration, physical practitioners reconnaissance, attack elementalists clearing the field, auxiliary elementalists treating, logistics supply posts recovering magic crystals, ores, and precious medicinal materials, etc., all of which are indispensable. Therefore, in the second round of melee, forming cliques and fighting in groups will not be restricted, but will be encouraged. Points are scored based on the number of heads harvested, which ensures that the scores of truly powerful psychics are not too low, thus creating a balance. Generally speaking, the battle between colleges is indeed a relatively fair assessment. It does not completely determine the level based on talent, but only judges the hero by his comprehensive strength. Fei Chen rolled his eyes at Chen Chen and said unhappily, "You want to get some experience for free, right?" Chen Chen nodded, his tone very kind, "Yes, Chen, go and have S*X with her." Chen Fei. Why does this kid talk so annoyingly? Fei Chen gritted his teeth. Looking at the delicious food in front of the two people opposite, Fei Chen thought for a moment and said maliciously, "Then if you want to listen to my experience, shouldn't you express your opinion?" As he spoke, he suggestively raised his chin towards the food in front of Chen Chen and Zhang Ning. Seeing Fei Chen's teasing expression, Zhang Ning burst out laughing, "This guy doesn't look as annoying as before." Chen Chen followed suit and nodded obediently. He took Chen Fei's magic crystal card from the table and walked towards the still open window. Chen Fei. This brat. Chen Fei gritted his teeth. This guy is a white-faced but evil-hearted guy. 5 minutes later, Chen Chen came over with a plate, smiling, and brought a cup of vanilla milkshake to Zhang Ning. "Can you tell me now?" Senior Chen Fei raised his middle finger, then snatched the plate indignantly and slammed it on the table in front of him. After a few seconds, Chen Fei gritted his teeth and said, "I know you newcomers are very curious about this legendary third round, but this third round is not something you can enter just because you want to." Zhang Ning raised her face slightly, and 2 dimples appeared on her pretty face. "Humph, if you can go in, why can't Chen Chen and I go in?" Chen Fei was so angry at the goddess's retort, but he couldn't refute her, so he could only swallow his anger and said, "Do you still want to listen?" "Listen. Of course I listen, come on, senior, open your mouth ah." Chen Chen's voice was extremely gentle, just like a harmless little brother next door. Chen Fei was careless for a moment and opened his mouth, so Chen Chen fed a huge piece of ginger into his mouth with one chopstick. Chen Fei's face turned green with anger, and he looked at Chen Chen with flaming eyes. Chen Chen smiled, resting his hand on his chin, and said, "I guess the third level should be for the group of people with the highest scores in the second level? The strength of these people is already difficult to rank, and they are expected to sprint to A level, or S level, right?" Fei Chen spat out the ginger in his mouth, glanced at Chen Chen, and finally nodded. Chen Chen rubbed his chin, as expected. "But what you said is not entirely correct." Fei Chen looked a little strange. "Hey. S rank? How could you say that?" Chen Fei picked up a beanstick from the plate with chopsticks. As expected, a newborn calf is not afraid of a tiger. Among the students of our Northeastern College, there has never been an S-rank psychic. Never appeared. Never appeared. Now it was Chen Chen and Zhang Ning's turn to be surprised. "How could that be?" Zhang Ning asked back. Chen Fei's face was not looking good, but he still planned to honestly tell the 2 newcomers of the school war the true situation of the school's strength. "You should know that the school war is carried out by the 8 schools separately, right?" Chen Chen and Zhang Ning both nodded. Chen Fei continued, "But the gap in strength between the schools is actually very large. Have you heard of this?" "I've heard something." Zhang Ning recalled the information he had heard from his old father. The establishment of the academy corresponds to the 8 battlefields, so there are 8 academies in the northeast, southeast, northwest, southwest, east, west, north, and south. Among them, the east, west, south, and north academies are powerful academies, while the northeast, southeast, northwest, and southwest academies are ordinary academies. The strength gap between the two is very large. It is even rumored that there are many S-level students in those 4 schools. But what does this have to do with our academy war? Could it be that? Thinking of a possibility, Zhang Ning's delicate brows frowned. The third stage of the college battle is a joint assessment of the 8 schools. Chapter 21. Chen Fei nodded solemnly, as if he recalled the extremely terrifying scene he saw 3 years ago. That's right. 8 schools will participate in the third round together. In the third round, because the gap between the schools is too big, the 4 schools in Northeast, Southeast, Northwest, and Southwest have always been killed, so they have never produced an S-level Esper. After the third round, the top 1 to 100 on the elite list will be determined based on their performance. Hearing this, Chen Chen raised his eyebrows. Then how did you get in? Your actual level is only around C-level advanced, right? It should be a bit difficult for you to enter the third level, right? Chen Fei gnashed his teeth and said, in the second round, I happened to team up with Fakana, Chu Feng and the others, and accumulated a wave of kills, and sneaked in. Chen Chen laughed out loud. It turned out that there really was someone who made a big profit. However, hearing the names Fakana and Kai Feng again, Chen Chen's curiosity was aroused. Fakana and Kai Feng seem to be mentioned so often. Are they the strongest people in our academy? Chen Fei and Zhang Ning looked at Chen Chen as if they had seen a ghost. Zhang Ning's eyes widened, and after a long while he said, Chen Chen, you have been in school for 3 years, how come you don't know anything? Chen Fei also looked at Chen Chen with surprise, thinking that this guy really seemed like a guy who popped out from another planet. Well, I don't really pay attention. Chen Chen said somewhat helplessly. Okay. Zhang Ning spread his hands and explained to Chen Chen, Fakana and Chu Feng are seniors from the Elemental Department Class 1. They both got the low-level A rank in the last school battle and ranked 9th and 10th on the elite list. Zhang Ning's tone became depressed as he spoke, however, I only thought that the seniors were amazing before, and I never thought that our other 4 schools had never had an S-rank mutant. Her father, Zhang Ang, has been teaching at Northeastern College for so many years, but he has never witnessed the birth of an S-rank psychic. This is a pity. Chen Chen doesn't have such a strong sense of college honor. In his eyes, this was normal. After all, many resources were allocated to the 4 powerful colleges of East, West, South, and North, and the differences between the colleges would only grow. Under such circumstances, Fakana and Kai Feng were still able to get the 10th and 9th place on the elite list. Chen Chen already admired these 2 people whom he had never met. It's amazing that you can reach this level in your first college battle. Chen Chen exclaimed in amazement. Of course, they are the pride of our elemental system. Hearing Chen Chen's praise, Chen Fei also felt proud. Then he thought of something and said slowly, your Kaiyu, Encore, and Oakland are also very good. Not only did they enter the third level, they also ranked 20th, 31st, and 37th on the elite list. Oh! Chen Chen was a little surprised, and then he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. It seems that when Ang and Oakland competed with him, they didn't release water, but an entire ocean. Why are you so surprised? You should have some confidence in your Taijutsu department. Chen Fei said in a fake tone. Chen Chen rubbed his chin, thought for a moment, and then raised a pure smile on his face. I'm not surprised, I'm just feeling a little sad about how much Ang and Oakland let me win in the last competition. What did you say? What did you say? 2 exclamations sounded at the same time, and Chen Chen's ears almost buzzed. Keep your voice down. You said you beat seniors in K and Oakland. Chen Fei's fingers began to tremble as he pointed at Chen Chen. Zhang Ning looked at Chen Chen with increasingly strange eyes, as if he was looking at a monster. Chen Chen waved his hands helplessly and leaned back. It's not as exaggerated as you think. They just demonstrated sword skills with me. They didn't use any physical skills. That's amazing. I must have been kicked in the head by a donkey to come and cause trouble for you. Chen Fei slammed the table, his tone excited, and he even began to regret his behavior of challenging Chen Chen. Now that I think about it, the boy was so calm at that time because he was very confident in his own abilities. Maybe, this boy was laughing at himself in his heart for overestimating his own abilities. Fei Chen pulled Chen Chen over and shouted, Boy, did you agree to the challenge on purpose to make fun of me? Chen Chen calmly moved his plate towards Zhang Ning, then raised his head and said innocently to the angry Chen Fei, It's unfair. It was you who was so determined to drag me to the duel, and you have been imagining it all the time. You should have some confidence in your own strength. Chen Fei snorted coldly and let go of Chen Chen's collar. Then he sat down and ate several chicken wings to vent his anger. Chen Chen coughed dryly. He had almost finished eating. Seeing that it was almost afternoon, he wanted to go to the training ground to practice Extreme Blade. He was about to get up and leave, but suddenly remembered that Chen Fei had not yet explained clearly what the third level would test. So he sat down again and asked casually, "Senior, you haven't told me what the third level will test specifically." Chen Fei was still chewing chicken wings, and said incoherently, "Ah, didn't I tell you? Oh, the students who enter the third level have to explore an A-level fog gate." Chen Chen was stunned, and the light in his originally lazy black pupils suddenly gathered. "You mean, an A-level fog gate?" Chen Chen's eyes lit up, and he looked at Chen Fei with eagerness. Fei Chen protected his chest with both hands. "What are you doing?" Chen Chen ignored Chen Fei's strange movements and just repeated it eagerly and strangely, "A grade A mist gate." Chen Fei frowned and said, "Country bumpkin, is this weird? The school battle is to select talents with actual combat skills. It is normal that the last level is to explore the A-level fog gate. Why are you so excited?" Chen Chen smiled strangely, "Ah, indeed, I shouldn't be so excited." But his sparkling eyes fully exposed Chen Chen's inner unrest at the moment. To use an old saying, he was like an eagle seeing its prey, with a ferocious light in his eyes. If Chen Chen guessed correctly, this A-level fog gate was the fog gate where the remains of the winged man were excavated before his rebirth. No wonder this door appeared right after the battle at the academy. No wonder the specific collections that have been excavated have always been kept secret. It turns out that this was the last level of the academy battle. It seems that Chen Chen has to go to this third level. Chen Chen tidied up his seat, took the plate in his hands, and said to Chen Fei and Zhang Ning, "I'm done eating. I'm leaving first. You guys take your time eating." Then he turned and left. Fei Chen and Zhang Ning looked at each other in bewilderment. After a few seconds, Fei Chen finally reacted and said angrily, "This kid, why is he suddenly like a chicken with blood injected? He didn't even care that there was a goddess here and just left like that? It turns out that if there is no woman in his heart, he will be a god when he draws his sword." Zhang Ning snorted coldly, ignoring Chen Fei's nonsense. He ate a few bites and left quickly, leaving Chen Fei alone, standing there in a daze. Chapter 22. Chen Chen was walking towards the A1 training ground at this moment. Now, he can't wait to strengthen his strength. The appearance of the feathered man relics has undoubtedly aroused Chen Chen's interest in the battle of the academy. Crash! The door to the A1 training ground was gently closed. Buttons were undone one by one, and Chen Chen took off his shirt directly, revealing his muscular upper body. The boy's figure is still relatively thin, but compared to his previous skinny appearance, his body is undoubtedly more explosive now, with muscles bulging in streamlines, like a graceful black panther. The fusion of Umiran has improved the functions of this body to a near-perfect level. This is why Chen Chen has hardly received any physical training since his rebirth, but has been able to maintain a very high physical reaction speed and sensitivity. However, no matter how sophisticated the instrument is, it still requires precise control by the operator, and what Chen Chen needs most at this moment is this kind of control over his body. This is like driving a hover car at high speed with all configurations in perfect condition. If the driver does not have good operating awareness, this perfect car will also fall off a cliff due to loss of control. The black vine extended from the heart and transformed into a familiar black vine long sword. Chen Chen subconsciously took it in his right hand. Although Chen Chen had confirmed that his dominant hand was his left hand after being reminded by Chu Yu and others, Chen Chen did not intend to change his left hand. On the contrary, he wanted to use this as one of his hidden skills. When the enemy is fighting desperately with his long sword, he finds that his opponent suddenly changes the long sword to his left hand. How desperate he will feel. When Chen Chen thought of this scene, he laughed with a rather evil taste. Chen Chen walked up and down the magic crystal display screen, tapped the operation area, and checked the virtual waterfall item. In an instant, a large amount of water mist seemed to appear out of thin air, soaking the air. Large streams of water fall from the ceiling, and the A1 training ground's built-in height of 50 meters makes the waterfall appear lifelike. The water flowed to the ground, but did not form water stains. Instead, it turned into illusory water elements. Obviously, this is a magical device made of water magic crystal. When talking about this kind of device, we have to mention a more unique type of elementalists, gold elementalists, or the more common name alchemists. These psychics are born with an extraordinary affinity for magic crystals, minerals, gems, and other materials. Coupled with their own wild imagination, solid mathematical knowledge, and excellent hands-on ability, they are often able to turn magic crystals and other materials into magic devices, magical equipment, or magic potions, which can then act on the real world. Don't think that alchemists are only good at refining, otherwise you will suffer a great loss. You should know that alchemists are recognized as difficult characters on the battlefield, because they are likely to be armed to the teeth. A scarf, a pair of gloves, or even a pair of underwear can become a weapon to kill the enemy. Chen Chen looked at this large waterfall made up of water elements and marveled at it. Looking at the waterfall, Chen Chen imagined the form he needed, and tapped the display screen with his right hand again. A metal platform appeared in the lower middle of the waterfall, and a dozen plum blossom piles rose from the ground. Then he thought about it and finally adjusted the water pressure to medium level. Well, that's about it. Chen Chen held the knife in his right hand, bent his knees slightly, jumped into the air, and landed lightly on the metal platform like a flying swift. As soon as he reached the platform, Chen Chen's body swayed due to the heavy pressure of the water, and a muffled groan escaped from his throat. Chen Chen thought to himself, this water pressure is really incredible. In an instant, he felt like 300 Zhongnings threw the notes in their hands onto his head at the same time. Chen Chen's naked upper body soon turned red due to the impact of the water, and his already fair body looked extremely miserable at this moment. It is so difficult to stand on it, not to mention that Chen Chen also plans to practice basic sword moves and extreme blade on it. Chen Chen had thought about practicing falling sand palm and desert sunlight, but after seeing these two body skills, Chen Chen keenly realized that these were not suitable for him at all. Firstly, although his physical strength is good, he is not a power-based physical practitioner at all. Secondly, these two main skills are too melee-oriented and cannot fully utilize the advantages of Black Vine. Judging from his battle with Chen Fei, the more suitable route for him is to use the Black Vines to block the enemy's route, and then kill them with a single blow with his long sword. Even if the blow fails, Yumiren can use devouring to finish off the enemy. In other words, Chen Chen's combat mode is sharp. It is fast. It is a fatal blow. This determines that falling sand palm and desert sunlight, as physical skills that focus on confrontation, are not suitable for Chen Chen. Chen Chen gritted his teeth, and his body finally adapted to the terrifying water pressure. The long sword in his right hand slowly rose and became parallel to his shoulder. With just this simple action, Chen Chen felt a lot of cold sweat on his forehead and back, but it soon merged with the water vapor of the waterfall and could not be distinguished from the surface. Chu Yu, as a swordsman, once taught Chen Chen that the ways of swords and knives have many similarities. The core is to make the weapon an extension of the arm, an extension of the heart. Finally, it must become an extension of the senses. Therefore, Chen Chen had to adjust the compatibility between himself and the sword so that he could command it as easily as with his own arm. At this moment, Chen Chen felt as if there were millions of ants biting his wrist, making it numb and itchy, and the long sword almost slipped out of his hand. Hold on a little longer. Chen Chen roared in his heart. His body began to tremble, his bones made a creaking sound, and his right arm shook violently. As it shook, the transparent back of his arm turned into a blurry white, appearing very unstable. But Chen Chen still persisted, he felt that he had not reached his limit yet. Chen Chen's arms had begun to become extremely sore and swollen at this time. If it were not for his perseverance, he would not be able to hold Yumiren's long sword at this moment. The most important thing for the hand holding a knife is not only flexibility, but also calmness. Flexibility is to adapt to the changing situation, while calmness means that in the midst of ever-changing situations, only the connection between the samurai and his sword remains unchanged. Therefore, in order to sense and strengthen this connection, Chen Chen chose the most basic training method. Even though Chu Yu and the others repeatedly praised Chen Chen's talent, Chen Chen understood that the foundation was a hurdle he had not yet overcome. He didn't have that much time to accumulate things over time, the events after his rebirth were too connected, and there was not enough time for him to adapt bit by bit. After another 5 minutes, the tingling sensation disappeared, replaced by numbness. Chen Chen's heart tightened, knowing that this was the limit of his body, and any further would harm his body. 3 black vines extended from Chen Chen's heart, shot to the ground, and lifted Chen Chen off the metal platform under the waterfall like a human-shaped spider. The strong water flow disappeared, but due to inertia, Chen Chen still felt his body numb. However, Chen Chen did not stop to rest immediately, because at this moment, his body's energy was exhausted, and it was more appropriate to infuse the body with new vitality. Chapter 22. Chen Chen was walking towards the A1 training ground at this moment. Now, he can't wait to strengthen his strength. The appearance of the feathered man relics has undoubtedly aroused Chen Chen's interest in the battle of the academy. Crash! The door to the A1 training ground was gently closed. Buttons were undone one by one, and Chen Chen took off his shirt directly, revealing his muscular upper body. The boy's figure is still relatively thin, but compared to his previous skinny appearance, his body is undoubtedly more explosive now, with muscles bulging in streamlines, like a graceful black panther. The fusion of Umiran has improved the functions of this body to a near-perfect level. This is why Chen Chen has hardly received any physical training since his rebirth, but has been able to maintain a very high physical reaction speed and sensitivity. However, no matter how sophisticated the instrument is, it still requires precise control by the operator, and what Chen Chen needs most at this moment is this kind of control over his body. This is like driving a hover car at high speed with all configurations in perfect condition. If the driver does not have good operating awareness, this perfect car will also fall off a cliff due to loss of control. The black vine extended from the heart and transformed into a familiar black vine long sword. Chen Chen subconsciously took it in his right hand. Although Chen Chen had confirmed that his dominant hand was his left hand after being reminded by Chu Yu and others, Chen Chen did not intend to change his left hand. On the contrary, he wanted to use this as one of his hidden skills. When the enemy is fighting desperately with his long sword, he finds that his opponent suddenly changes the long sword to his left hand. How desperate he will feel. When Chen Chen thought of this scene, he laughed with a rather evil taste. Chen Chen walked up and down the magic crystal display screen, tapped the operation area, and checked the virtual waterfall item. In an instant, a large amount of water mist seemed to appear out of thin air, soaking the air. Large streams of water fall from the ceiling, and the A1 training ground's built-in height of 50 meters makes the waterfall appear lifelike. The water flowed to the ground, but did not form water stains. Instead, it turned into illusory water elements. Obviously, this is a magical device made of water magic crystal. When talking about this kind of device, we have to mention a more unique type of elementalists, gold elementalists, or the more common name alchemists. These psychics are born with an extraordinary affinity for magic crystals, minerals, gems, and other materials. Coupled with their own wild imagination, solid mathematical knowledge, and excellent hands-on ability, they are often able to turn magic crystals and other materials into magic devices, magical equipment, or magic potions, which can then act on the real world. Don't think that alchemists are only good at refining, otherwise you will suffer a great loss. You should know that alchemists are recognized as difficult characters on the battlefield, because they are likely to be armed to the teeth. A scarf, a pair of gloves, or even a pair of underwear can become a weapon to kill the enemy. Chen Chen looked at this large waterfall made up of water elements and marveled at it. Looking at the waterfall, Chen Chen imagined the form he needed, and tapped the display screen with his right hand again. A metal platform appeared in the lower middle of the waterfall, and a dozen plum blossom piles rose from the ground. Then he thought about it and finally adjusted the water pressure to medium level. Well, that's about it. Chen Chen held the knife in his right hand, bent his knees slightly, jumped into the air, and landed lightly on the metal platform like a flying swift. As soon as he reached the platform, Chen Chen's body swayed due to the heavy pressure of the water, and a muffled groan escaped from his throat. Chen Chen thought to himself, this water pressure is really incredible. In an instant, he felt like 300 Zhongnings threw the notes in their hands onto his head at the same time. Chen Chen's naked upper body soon turned red due to the impact of the water, and his already fair body looked extremely miserable at this moment. It is so difficult to stand on it, not to mention that Chen Chen also plans to practice basic sword moves and extreme blade on it. Chen Chen had thought about practicing falling sand palm and desert sunlight, but after seeing these two body skills, Chen Chen keenly realized that these were not suitable for him at all. Firstly, although his physical strength is good, he is not a power-based physical practitioner at all. Secondly, these two main skills are too melee-oriented and cannot fully utilize the advantages of Black Vine. Judging from his battle with Chen Fei, the more suitable route for him is to use the Black Vines to block the enemy's route, and then kill them with a single blow with his long sword. Even if the blow fails, Umiran can use devouring to finish off the enemy. In other words, Chen Chen's combat mode is sharp. It is fast. It is a fatal blow. This determines that falling sand palm and desert sunlight, as physical skills that focus on confrontation, are not suitable for Chen Chen. Chen Chen gritted his teeth, and his body finally adapted to the terrifying water pressure. The long sword in his right hand slowly rose and became parallel to his shoulder. With just this simple action, Chen Chen felt a lot of cold sweat on his forehead and back, but it soon merged with the water vapor of the waterfall and could not be distinguished from the surface. Chu Yu, as a swordsman, once taught Chen Chen that the ways of swords and knives have many similarities. The core is to make the weapon an extension of the arm, an extension of the heart. Finally, it must become an extension of the senses. Therefore, Chen Chen had to adjust the compatibility between himself and the sword so that he could command it as easily as with his own arm. At this moment, Chen Chen felt as if there were millions of ants biting his wrist, making it numb and itchy, and the long sword almost slipped out of his hand. Hold on a little longer. Chen Chen roared in his heart. His body began to tremble, his bones made a creaking sound, and his right arm shook violently. As it shook, the transparent back of his arm turned into a blurry white, appearing very unstable. But Chen Chen still persisted, he felt that he had not reached his limit yet. Chen Chen's arms had begun to become extremely sore and swollen at this time. If it were not for his perseverance, he would not be able to hold Yumiran's long sword at this moment. The most important thing for the hand holding a knife is not only flexibility, but also calmness. Flexibility is to adapt to the changing situation, while calmness means that in the midst of ever-changing situations, only the connection between the samurai and his sword remains unchanged. Therefore, in order to sense and strengthen this connection, Chen Chen chose the most basic training method. Even though Chu Yu and the others repeatedly praised Chen Chen's talent, Chen Chen understood that the foundation was a hurdle he had not yet overcome. He didn't have that much time to accumulate things over time, the events after his rebirth were too connected, and there was not enough time for him to adapt bit by bit. After another 5 minutes, the tingling sensation disappeared, replaced by numbness. Chen Chen's heart tightened, knowing that this was the limit of his body, and any further would harm his body. 3 black vines extended from Chen Chen's heart, shot to the ground, and lifted Chen Chen off the metal platform under the waterfall like a human-shaped spider. The strong water flow disappeared, but due to inertia, Chen Chen still felt his body numb. However, Chen Chen did not stop to rest immediately, because at this moment, his body's energy was exhausted, and it was more appropriate to infuse the body with new vitality. Chapter 24. Chen Chen slept until 11 o'clock in the morning of the next day. When Chen Chen sat up in a daze, he was shocked to realize that he had skipped class. He had a practical training class today. Is this the first time in my 2 lives? Chen Chen touched his messy hair with some amusement. I glanced at the clock on the wall, it was already 9 minutes past 11, and I could go straight to lunch after washing up. It seems that I can't get anything done today. I might as well go to the prosecutor's office this afternoon. As Chen Chen thought about it, he got out of bed in his slippers and walked into the bathroom. After running some water on his lower body, Chen Chen picked up the toothbrush and started brushing his teeth with half-opened eyes. Chen Chen hadn't put on his shirt yet, revealing his upper body wrapped in bandages. He looked at himself in the mirror unconsciously, and suddenly twisted his waist. Hey, why do I feel a little taller? Chen Chen opened his eyes with great effort, and looked at the young man in the mirror, who seemed to have grown a little taller, with some surprise. When I looked closely, I realized it was not my illusion, it really had grown a little longer. Originally, Chen Chen was still a teenager between 16 and 17 years old at this moment, which was the stage of growing up. Moreover, the bodies of physical practitioners develop quickly, so it was not surprising that there were such changes. The boy in the mirror has a very smooth figure, his abdominal muscles are clearly visible, his mermaid line is neatly tied below the waist, and his Adam's apple is slightly protruding. This is a very energetic young man. Chen Chen stretched out his right arm and exerted a little force, and saw his biceps bulge out, as if filled with explosive power. Chen Chen nodded with satisfaction, with white foam of toothpaste still in his mouth. It seems that the training these days has also been effective. Chen Chen quickly packed himself up, put on his school's white shirt, and went out. After casually eating a bowl of beef noodles at a street stall, Chen Chen went straight to the East District Prosecutor's office. This is Chen Chen's second visit to the Procuratorate. It is still the same low-key and mysterious building like a black panther crawling on the ground. 2 statues, a statue of an arbitration angel holding a holy sword, and a statue of an oriental saint with his arms clasped to symbolize self-salvation, stand on both sides of the grey marble arch, giving people a sense of mystery, solemnity, holiness, and oppression. Chen Chen strode into the hall. The last time he came, he was escorted by Lang Ning, so Chen Chen didn't take a closer look at the situation inside the Procuratorate. This time, he took a closer look. Chen Chen's first impression of the interior of the procuratorate was that it was empty. The building has a classic ancient Roman cloister structure. The center has been left empty for use as a hall, which is surrounded by layers of intricately carved columns. The glass roof, which is dozens of meters high, projects sunlight into the building, making it appear very elegant and holy. There were almost no people on the first floor, with only a few staff members in black windbreakers walking around. One of them brushed past Chen Chen's shoulder and walked past him. At the moment when the two passed by, Chen Chen raised his eyebrows slightly. This black-clad officer is at least a B rank or above physical martial arts expert. The man in the black windbreaker just glanced at Chen Chen and walked out the door. His right waist was slightly arched and a short knife was inserted diagonally. Chen Chen sighed in his heart. It seems that he underestimated the procuratorate. The function of the procuratorate is not limited to patrolling the city and combating ordinary crimes. You know, even in the eastern battlefield where Chen Chen was before his rebirth, superpowers above B level were not as common as they are here now. Rank B and above psychics are already the backbone of psychics. They can already be the captain of a military squad or a hunter squad, leading a separate team to cleanse the mist gates of rank C and below. In the prosecutor's office, people with special abilities like this are merely clerks. How powerful is Asu as the deputy director of the procuratorate? A rank or S rank? Chen Chen decided not to walk around casually anymore to avoid breaking taboos, so he looked around and finally saw a place that looked like an information desk. Chen Chen walked over and greeted the staff member who was busy sorting out documents. Hello. When the staff member heard someone greeting him, he raised his head from a pile of messy documents. Chen Chen looked closely and found that the staff member was actually a big sister with an extremely hot body. The woman in professional attire looked at the visitor with a smile, her red lips slightly parted. Oh, it's a little brother? What's the matter with you coming to the prosecutor's office? While speaking, she adjusted her black suit which was a little wrinkled because of her full chest. Chen Chen's face flushed instantly, and even his voice trembled unconsciously. I'm here to see Deputy Director Asu and Prosecutor Lang Ning. Arai's eyes lit up when he heard this, as if he had seen some rare animal. In his narrow eyes, a tiny bit of starlight shone. You came to find Asu and Lang Ning? Could it be that you are the young boy Chen Chen? Chen Chen nodded shyly. Arielia raised her red lips and slid across a charming arc. Her slender hand reached out and gently brushed the collar of Chen Chen's white shirt. After seeing the school badge of Northeastern College Physical Education Class 9, Chen Chen, she exhaled like a orchid. Ah, it turned out to be you, sister. I have heard of you a long time ago. The last interjection was spoken almost close to Chen Chen's ear. Chen Chen subconsciously took a few steps back, covered his neck which seemed to be burned by the heat, and looked at Arielia with a blushing face. Arielia smiled like a little fox, but what she said surprised Chen Chen a little. Well, he is indeed a genuine dual attribute psychic. Moreover, he has made some breakthroughs in physical skills recently. Not bad, he is a good seedling. Chen Chen frowned warily, thinking to himself, this woman has a very sharp perception. Puchi, don't be afraid of your sister. I like young boys like you the most. Arielia covered her mouth and sneered. If her teammates saw this scene, they would definitely tremble in fear, because they knew very well that the harder this sister laughed, the more miserable the fate of the guy on the opposite side would be. The heat on Chen Chen's face had not yet subsided. He had almost no resistance to such a big sister, and his psychological defenses completely collapsed. You better tell me, where are Deputy Director Asu and Prosecutor Lang Ning? They have something to talk to me about. Arielia blinked, her figure blurred for a moment, and she disappeared in front of Chen Chen. Chen Chen's eyes narrowed and he looked around warily. But the next moment, he couldn't move, because he felt a soft body close to him. The next second, a breath of hot air blew into his ears. Hey, little brother, you still need to strengthen your training. Chen Chen's scalp tingled and he quickly took a few steps back to the right. This woman is very dangerous. The oppression she gives Chen Chen is even stronger than Asu. Looking at the woman in front of him, who was wearing a black suit and a hip skirt and laughing nonchalantly, Chen Chen thought of a possibility. Then, he hesitated and said, Are you the director of the prosecutor's office? The woman seemed a little surprised by Chen Chen's words, and then she chuckled. Ah, you saw through it. Chen Chen was shocked. It turned out to be the director of the procuratorate. Just as the two were confronting each other, hurried footsteps sounded behind them. Click, click, click. The visitor seemed very anxious, afraid that something might happen. Chen Chen turned his body sideways, keeping a wary eye on the woman in front of him while observing who was coming. It's Su and Lang Ning. Director. Let Chen Chen go. I told you to let Lang Ning and I handle it, why are you here anyway? Su rushed out, complaining to the woman, while pulling Chen Chen's hand and looking him up and down, fearing that something might happen to the young man in front of him. Being touched all over by a grown man, Chen Chen felt very uncomfortable and quickly said, I'm fine. Su saw that Chen Chen didn't have any missing limbs or anything like that, so he heaved a sigh of relief, looked at the nonchalant woman in front of him with an accusing look, and shouted word by word, Aliria. The woman covered her ears and muttered impatiently, I know, I was wrong. I promised not to come out before. Lang Ning also said angrily, Director, since you knew this, why are you still making things difficult for Chen Chen? Didn't I already warn him? Looking at Aliria, who was being scolded by the two and covering her ears like a child, Chen Chen laughed out loud. It seems that this director is even more troublesome than Su. What are you laughing at? Little brat. Be careful or I'll make you suffer. Aliria gave a kind smile. Chen Chen coughed twice and stopped laughing. Are you kidding? If this woman is really angry, even 10 of me won't be enough for her to tear apart. This director called Arielia is definitely an S-rank expert. Snort. Arielia raised her red lips and smiled proudly. But soon, after seeing the looks in Su and Lang Ning's eyes, she lowered her voice guiltily, Okay, Xiao Su Su, Lang, I won't dare to do it again. I'll take Chen Chen to the second underground floor now. Chen Chen heard this, and the alarm in his heart went off. He immediately interrupted and asked, Where are you going? Su turned and looked at Chen Chen with a smile, as if he was staring at a human treasure plate. Of course, you are going to accept the gift of sincerity sent by the Procuratorate. Chapter 25. The lights gradually dimmed. This is the underground world of the Eastern District Prosecutor's Office. Chen Chen was following behind Su and Lang Ning, heading towards the unknown underground space. If there is a person with good perception, as long as he senses the breath here, he will feel a sense of horror, because there are more than a dozen breaths here that are comparable to S-level monsters. Of course, the owner of one of the breaths is the red-haired woman with a lazy and casual face walking behind Chen Chen, Arya. Chen Chen frowned. The further he went down, the stronger the dangerous atmosphere became. Chen Chen glanced at Su who was walking in front of him, and asked carefully, What exactly is this gift? When Su heard Chen Chen's question, he looked at Arielia and smiled mysteriously, Well, we can't tell you for the time being. You just need to know that this is a mist collection similar to the Eye of a Musa. A misty collection similar to the Eye of a Mutha? Chen Chen's eyelids jumped. This was really a generous gift. Without asking any more questions, Chen Chen quietly followed the few people, silently memorizing the approximate terrain of the underground passage in his mind. Don't ask Chen Chen why he wanted to memorize it, the reason is, firstly, memorizing the terrain would make it easier to escape, secondly, Chen Chen felt that perhaps he would have some wonderful connection with this basement in the future. As they were going down, Su seemed to suddenly remember this incident and said casually, I heard that young boy Chen Chen has been very popular in school recently. Chen Chen raised his eyebrows, If you mean when Senior Chen Fei and I were sparring, I revealed my dual attribute abilities. I think so. Young man Chen Chen is too modest. Of course, it's not just this matter, for example, there are also the competitions between you and Chu Yu and K and Oakland. Su smiled. Has the prosecutor's office's spies reached this point? Chen Chen was a little surprised. Arielia yawned and said, I really hope that our little Sugzu can develop the procuratorate to this level. But unfortunately, we don't have enough manpower. The matter of young Chen Chen is one that needs special attention, so we know more about it. Yet. Chen Chen responded with a half-smile. Arya also smiled softly in response. Arrive. Lang Ning's magnetic voice interrupted the two's tit-for-tat. Chen Chen's heart skipped a beat, and he realized that they had been walking down for half an hour. This so-called underground second floor was definitely not measured by the height of an ordinary building. Similarly, the value of the things hidden in this underground space was definitely beyond Chen Chen's imagination. Hey, our little brother Chen Chen is nervous. Arielia said in an ambiguous voice, with a hint of interest flashing across her charming and delicate face, Don't worry, although the things sealed here are terrible, there are 2 S-rank psychics besides me here, you don't have to worry at all. There are still 2 S-rank psychics? It's more than just worry, Chen Chen is almost scared to death, okay? When did S-rank psychics become cabbages? There are 3 of them hidden in the small East District Prosecutor's office. There must be something fishy about this East District Prosecutor's office. Chen Chen really doesn't have to worry now, anyway, if Arya and the others really want to harm him, they can just kill him. The 3 of them stopped in front of a small, half-open room. Chen Chen looked forward and, after a preliminary observation, could only roughly detect that this was a small room with extremely limited space, and the things stored inside seemed to be inanimate objects. Asu gave up the front and waved his hand, signaling Chen Chen to come to his side. Chen Chen pointed at himself, and after receiving a positive response, he walked forward. Chen Chen stayed in front of the room for a few seconds, then took a deep breath, took a step forward, put his right hand on the door handle, and pushed the door open. The expected horrific scene did not happen, and the room looked very ordinary. The room was about 2 feet long and 1 foot wide, and seemed extremely small. It was dim overall, and the only light source in the room was a small light blue magic crystal embedded in the ceiling. The most eye-catching thing is a small box in the middle separated by glass, with inscriptions engraved on the glass. In the center of the box is a small stone sculpture, about as high as a human arm. Chen Chen frowned and looked at the stone sculpture in the middle of the box. At first glance, he didn't notice anything unusual. He was far less shocked than when he first saw the eye of a musa. Chen Chen took a few steps forward and came to the front of the stone sculpture. Only then could he observe the appearance of the stone sculpture clearly in the dim light. This small stone sculpture depicts a mythical creature. This mythical creature has 3 heads, 1 for a human, 1 for a lion, and 1 for a bull. A holy and elegant male head is located in the middle of the 3 heads, and below is a naked upper body with clear muscles, strong and resolute, but the lower body of the statue is a long dragon body with blue-black scales, and a black sickle is sticking out from behind the young man. Chen Chen opened his eyes wide, trying to see the shape of the statue more clearly, but was horrified to find that his sight was firmly drawn to the half-exposed sickle and he couldn't move it away. Chen Chen's scalp began to tingle. He used all his willpower to control his gaze and look elsewhere, but he accidentally looked at the human head among the 3 heads. He was directly met with a pair of half-bent eyes that seemed to be smiling, but also seemed to be filled with deep mourning. At this moment, Chen Chen's sight suddenly appeared: the temple in the vast yellow sand, the sunken ship under the ancient river, the bull-headed monster in the mysterious maze, and the vast and boundless galaxy. A dizziness from the depths of his soul almost put Chen Chen into shock. Oh no! There's something wrong with this stone sculpture. But even though he was aware of the danger, Chen Chen was unable to control his body. His right eye had begun to become bloodshot and seemed about to burst at any time. At this critical moment, a faint fragrance wafted from behind Chen Chen. Chen Chen blinked with difficulty, and a white, soft, boneless hand covered Chen Chen's eyes, blocking his sight. A light laugh was heard. It was Arya. "Ah, I told you to walk in front, I didn't tell you to be so close." Arya covered Chen Chen's eyes with her left hand, pulled Chen Chen's sleeve with her right hand, stepped back a few steps, and dragged him back to Aksu and Lang Ning, who were standing sideways. Chen Chen's eyelashes trembled restlessly under Arielia's palm. Arya could sense Chen Chen's nervousness and fear at this moment, and couldn't help but smile helplessly. This kid is still inexperienced, this is an S-level mist collection. He actually walked forward so brazenly and even looked at him. While keeping his body sideways to avoid any possibility of eye contact with the stone sculpture, Asu said anxiously, "Chen Chen, now concentrate and use your consciousness to continuously outline a common thing in life." Asu's words echoed in the distant place in Chen Chen's mind, causing his scattered consciousness to be guided by his instinct, to sketch out common things in life. The bowl of beef noodles he had eaten before coming to the procuratorate automatically emerged in Chen Chen's mind. His consciousness surged towards this image like a tide. Chen Chen kept sketching the color, fragrance, and taste of the bowl of noodles in his mind. Gradually, Chen Chen's mind became clearer and clearer until he fully recovered. Chen Chen straightened up, half knelt on the ground, and retched a few times. After dozens of seconds, Chen Chen finally recovered and asked with a pale face, "What the hell is this?" Arya looked back at the stone sculpture as if nothing had happened, and said cheerfully, "Didn't I tell you? It's a mist collection similar to the Eye of Amutha. However, this mist collection is far more dangerous than the Eye of Amutha." Chen Chen rolled his eyes and said unhappily, "No, Do you really want to give me a gift? Are you sure you don't want to send me away? Ha 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 ha, little brother Chen Chen, you are really humorous. Chen Chen's painful expression undoubtedly made the sickly woman, Arielia, feel a perverted sense of pleasure, and she actually laughed out loud. But when she saw the resentful looks in Aksu and Lang Ning's eyes, Arielia could only curl her lips and stop her ridicule. Asu helped Chen Chen up and explained, I originally asked you to walk in front because this room is too small and a bit crowded. Who would have thought that you would stare at the stone sculpture as soon as you entered? You didn't have any vigilance at all. Chen Chen. It is indeed his fault that he has little education and limited knowledge. Chen Chen could only say helplessly, okay, I accept this explanation. So, what on earth is this thing, so evil? While speaking, he also imitated Asu and Lang Ning and stood sideways to avoid unconsciously making eye contact with the stone sculpture. However, when two people stand sideways, it is not strange that they can face each other. However, when Chen Chen joined in, the scene suddenly became weird, because the room was extremely narrow. Chen Chen was sandwiched between Asu and Lang Ning, and his white shirt became wrinkled from rubbing against each other. A philosophical taste suddenly rose in the narrow room. Two blushes suddenly appeared on Aria's charming face. Aria, stop your fantasies. Director, stop your fantasies. Asu and Lang Ning spoke at the same time. Chen Chen. Ahem, okay, I didn't mean it. Arielia waved her hands, but the mocking look on her face didn't show any apology at all. Let's get back to the topic. Let me introduce our young boy Chen Chen. This is the most precious mist collection of the East District Prosecutor's Office. Mist collection No. 009 Kiss of Chronos. Arielia blinked at Chen Chen. The introduction in the archive bag is, give the gods a pious kiss, and you will have the power to control time and space. But be careful, the disordered will lose itself in the mist of history. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel so you are notified of future uploads. You can find the next parts in the playlist visible on the screen or on my channel. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.